Number 10. DCAU. In the main animated universe known as the DCAU, the DC Animated Universe, Poison Ivy isn't quite as powerful as her comic book counterpart. She doesn't have the power to manipulate plants, but you know what's cool about her? She doesn't really need that. Here, Pamela actually relies on her smarts to get stuff done typically. She often makes her own poisons, toxins, and serums using plants, using her skills as a genius chemist and botanist to do so. Aside from that, Poison Ivy also is known for having an immunity to all poisons and toxins, even Joker gas. Ivy doesn't just have brains and toxic immunity though. She also has some bronze in this reality. This version of Ivy is also a skilled gymnast and comes armed with a wrist-mounted crossbow, which she occasionally uses. Later on, she also develops pheromones, which she often uses to make men do her bidding. A quite literal femme fatale. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, you should go check out our newest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. And when you head on over there, hit subscribe and let them know that Amanda sent you. Number 9. Gotham by Gaslight. Even the old-timey Victorian version of Ivy is pretty cool. Gotham by Gaslight is a series and alternate Earth where Batman actually hunts Jack the Ripper in Gotham City. It is set in the 19th century, turn of the century sort of era. Here, Pamela Isley is also a baddie. She ends up appearing in Convergence Shazam issue number 2 instead of the main Gotham by Gaslight story. Here she is revealed to be one of the rogues of Batman from the Gotham by Gaslight reality. We also learn that she does in fact still have chlorokinesis powers, which I think is pretty neat. It should also be noted that there is in fact a Batman Gotham by Gaslight animated film as well, but for this point we're focusing on the version of the reality from the comics. So not to be confused with the animated film. Number 8. Arrowverse. I'm not sure if we are still calling it that or if we're calling it the CW verse at this point, but you know what I'm talking about here. Poison Ivy is a character who actually appears in the Batwoman series, first being mentioned in episode 13 of the second season, I'll Give You a Clue, and first appearing in the 8th episode of the third season of the series, Trust Destiny. She is portrayed by Bridget Riga in the show, and like her comic book counterpart, has chlorokinesis powers which allow her to command, create, and manipulate plant life. Ivy here, however, does not have pheromone powers, but instead hypnotism powers, which seemingly allow her to control those who lock eyes with her. However, even this power, like Ivy's pheromone powers in the comics, can be thwarted. Number 7. Young Justice. This alternate version of Ivy is definitely a villain, being a member of the Injustice League. She not only has her now typical chlorokinesis powers, but has also worked to create even more monstrous plants, enhancing them with various types of venom, tech, radiation, and magic, including even Joker venom. While Poison Ivy is a force to be reckoned with in this reality, she does ultimately get defeated by Young Justice. But hey, they're the main team of the animated series, and villains are basically designed to lose to heroes, especially if it's a hero-centric story. One of the things I really love about Ivy in the animated series Young Justice is her look. She has green markings on her face and her arms that look like vines almost on her green-hued skin. Number 6. Vampire Batman. I think there are actually a few realities where Batman has been affiliated with vampires. I mean, kind of makes sense. Batman, vampire bats. It's kind of a no-brainer when it comes to superhero and monster mashups. This vampire Batman that we were talking about though is probably one of the most famous, hailing from the reality of Earth 43, which appears as the main reality of the story Batman and Dracula Red Reign and its sequels. Here Batman willingly becomes a vampire in order to better track down and defeat Dracula. While only part vampire at that time, eventually Batman in this reality would go full vamp after giving into his bloodlust and feeding on the Joker. Dun dun dun! Number 5. Ghostmaker. Ghostmaker for me was originally a character I came in ready to dislike when it was announced in the comics. But then I read more about him, and the more I read the character, the more I really found that I quite like him actually. In fact, he might actually be one of my favorite new characters. Even if Ghostmaker initially still sounds like a silly name, it still does kind of sound silly to me. It's growing on me, along with the man behind the mask, Ming-Hua Khan. Ghostmaker initially was presented as a challenger to Batman, someone who might even usurp him when it came to being the hero of Gotham. In the end, it was revealed that Ghostmaker and Batman actually had a pretty long history, with Bruce befriending young Ming-Hua when they were both traveling the world, training to become vigilantes. vigilantes. In a way, you could even see Ghostmaker as a better version of Batman. He's often not as attached as Bruce is to people or places, preferring to stay detached and possibly incapable of attachment due to him being a psychopath. In a way, this can make him either weaker or stronger than Batman, depending on your perspective of strength and how best to approach vigilantism. Number 4. Azrael. Azrael is another alternate Batman version or variant who hails from the same reality as Bruce Wayne. Azrael is Jean-Paul Valley, who was asked to take Bruce's place as Batman after his back was broken by Bane during the events of Nightfall. As Batman, Azrael was ruthless and much more violent, believing that to get Gotham in order, this was the way that things would have to be done. Eventually, Bruce returned with a healed back and ended up reclaiming the cape and cowl from Azrael, but at that point, Azrael was actually so powerful that Bruce initially struggled to reclaim his mantle. He would call on both Nightwing and Robin to assist him in recovering the Batman mantle, and eventually would be victorious in defeating Azrael, who honestly, I feel bad for, as both the gain and then the loss of the Batman title really messed Jean-Paul up. Number 3. Owlman. Owlman is an alternate version of Batman who is, well, pretty evil, but not a direct alternate. Instead of being Bruce Wayne, he is Thomas Wayne Jr., the older brother to Bruce in his reality. He hails from Earth 3, the same universe that belongs to the Crime Syndicate, which of course he's also a part of. The Crime Syndicate is basically like an alternate evil version of the Justice League, and of course Owlman is like their version of Batman. Thomas actually killed his Earth's Bruce Wayne after his younger brother was reluctant to join him and kind of taken out their parents, Thomas and Martha. Thomas Jr. believed that this was necessary as their parents were, in his opinion, squandering the family fortune. Thomas would take up the mantle of Owlman instead of Batman, and like his Prime Earth counterpart, is an extremely skilled individual and highly experienced fighter. Thomas also happens to be a genius as well, which often gives him an edge against his opponents. Number 2. Batman Who Laughs. As much as I want to give someone like Batman Who Laughs my top spot on this list, he's kinda dead right now. At least he was seemingly dead and defeated after the events of Death Metal. Still, Batman Who Laughs made for a powerful enemy and a powerful alternate. He is basically the combination of Joker and Batman in one entity. Hailing from the also now seemingly gone dark multiverse, Batman Who Laughs was once just Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, in his reality of Earth -22. All the negative Earths are the dark multiverse Earths. After Joker learns that he is sick and will soon die, he decides to push Batman as far as he possibly can, which prompts Batman to, of course, snap. Literally. He snaps Joker's neck. And Joker's spine, however, is a little bit of Joker venom, which ekes out with his final breath, or his final exhale if you would prefer. And this Joker venom is then inhaled by Batman, who is basically corrupted by it, and then we get Batman Who Laughs. Number 1. Batmite. Weirdly enough, despite being completely ridiculous, Batmite actually might be one of the most powerful alternate versions of Batman of all time. This mischievous imp from the 5th dimension is to Batman what Mr. Mxyzptlk is to Superman. The imp actually looks up to Batman, idolizing him, which is why he dresses like him and adopts a similar name to the hero. However, Batmite, as Batman's number 1 fan, can also be super annoying, often acting as a foil or outright enemy to the hero, as he often likes to manipulate the fabric of reality to create scenarios where he can kind of watch Batman do his thing. This means that he usually gets in the way of Batman's everyday heroics, so he causes a lot of problems for the hero, which of course tends to drive Bruce crazy. It's also been implied before that Batmite isn't real, but only exists as a hallucination for Batman, representing his rational mind. I think that was actually a Grant Morrison story, so that is a possibility. But for the most part, he is depicted as an actual tangible character that just really loves Batman and is way too powerful.
Coming in at number 10 today is Milkman Man. The DC Universe Wiki says that Milkman Man is an imperfect copy of Superman, but with all that calcium, I gotta assume he has the strongest bones that you and I have ever seen. In JLA/Doom Patrol Special, The Milk Wars, the Doom Patrol has discovered that an interdimensional corporation called Retco has been stealing stories, reconfiguring them, and repackaging them for new markets. Retco has embedded itself into the current continuity, using the radioactive milk of psychic cows to quell the more dangerous impulses of the Justice League and turn them into heroes that are safe for the masses. That is literally the quote from the official summary, I am not even joking. Milkman Man specifically has all the same powers as the famous Kryptonian superhero, only he's a milkman and central part of the Community League of Rhode Island. Now, this group is actually a very sinister collection of pleasant-spoken normal folks. I know this doesn't sound scary, necessarily, but it's just like unsettling, like Twilight Zone style. Please do yourself the favor of reading this story and trying to figure out what the heck is going on, because it took me like a hot minute. Number 9. Red Sun Superman. Instead of landing in America, Red Sun Superman landed in the Soviet Union, and that allowed the Soviets to weaponize him instead of allowing him to live the quote normal life he traditionally has in the US. He received severe training that not even the original Superman underwent, as Red Sun Superman was always meant to be a weapon. This allowed him to become quite strong as he paired his severe training with his new communist sense of duty. If the training he underwent wasn't enough to prove this power though, Superman advanced the Soviet Union to almost worldwide control without resorting to war, and he virtually eliminated poverty and disease. While this sounds pretty great, it was supported by some pretty awful tactics behind closed doors by Superman himself, but also those who worked under him. This powerful version of Superman is a much more skilled Superman, if not slightly more ruthless, as that's what he was raised to be. But it was his ability to eventually realize the fault in his own actions and allow the world to become a utopia that kind of puts him a cut above everyone else, which is why he is at number 9 today. But he did turn people into mindless cyborg zombies, so he's a little terrifying. Number 8. Earth 17 Superman. On Earth 17, superheroes are a product of government experiments. The Superman of this universe, who was called Overman, was the first hero, with the other heroes being spawns of his DNA. Now this may be weird, but that ain't the weird part. He also doesn't seem horrifying at all yet, does he? Well, after contracting a certain kind of physically transmitted disease from another person, like that kind of disease, if you know what I'm saying, he ends up going insane and destroys the Justice League and reduces his entire world to rubble. He then gets his filthy paws on a doomsday device that he intends to use on Earth 17 to completely wipe it out. The Crisis on Infinite Earths destroyed this reality, just like DC tried to destroy such a naughty Superman story, even having different iterations of Overman, who we will be talking about in just a moment. But the internet never forgets DC Comics, and people like me exist to remind everyone of the things you published into this world, like naughty Superman contracting naughty diseases and reducing the world to ash. Ick. Number 7. Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going back in time to the infamous death of Superman's story. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. Well, in the dark multiverse, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she never expected was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back to life in the real world, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected, and so, assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the dark multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, sure, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, Lex Luthor's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman when he does finally return. The whole story is super tragic, but that also makes it one of the best to come out of the dark multiverse, in my opinion. Number 6. Overman. I told you we would talk about another Overman. This version of our favorite red and blue boy didn't end up in Kansas when he was ejected from Krypton. No, this Kal-El found himself in Sudetenland, Germany in 1938, and he was acquired by a certain mustached fascist. With Kal and Kryptonian tech, the Reich were obviously able to win World War II and rule over the entire planet. Later, Overman would become disgusted with the stashed man when his annihilation of those he deemed lesser had been finalized. Although Superman still served that man's political party, weird set of morals there, I don't know. Eventually though, he was cloned and received a romantic partner in the form of Overgirl. But after her passing, he was completely heartbroken and he supplied information to the freedom fighters who long opposed the fascists, which eventually led to the end of the new Reichman, this world's evil Justice League, and the city of Metropolis. With the grief of all those losses holding him down, he was overthrown by his own best friend. But I wouldn't feel too bad for him though, he was pretty bad. Number 5. Ultraman. Who would have thought that a Superman who is just a giant man baby would be one of the more powerful versions of the character? Ultraman is the Superman of Earth 3, where strength and power are held above everything else, even good and righteousness. Ultraman was born on the dying Krypton to Jor-El, who was able to secure a life pod for his incredibly powerful son, who he saw as his best chance of revenge. While in his life pod, Kal-El was given the ideology of becoming the strongest possible being, eschewing all weakness in himself and in others. His rocket crash landed in Smallville, right through the home of the dysfunctional couple Johnny and Martha Kent, who he forced to be his parents until he was 7 years old, when he then took their lives and burned their home to the ground. He took the name Ultraman, took over the Earth, and created the crime syndicate of America. Unlike Superman, Ultraman actually gets more powerful from kryptonite, and the sun is what makes him weaker, which is fine because he will literally just move the moon to block out the sun. Number 4. Brutal. Brutal is a cloned version of Superman, but unlike a certain bizarre version of Superman, this duplication was done by none other than Darkseid himself. Darkseid raised the resulting clone into a weapon and unleashed him on the superheroes of Earth 2, along with Steppenwolf and the other Hunger Dogs. Now, when Steppenwolf tried to subvert his master Darkseid and take Earth as his own, Brutal ruthlessly, or some might say brutally, takes Steppenwolf from this plane of existence with his heat vision, establishing his devotion to his lord Darkseid, being all like, "Let me make my intentions clear. Hail Darkseid," which is just a sweet line after you take down a general of Darkseid. Now the Earth became lost to Darkseid's minions, and eventually, after a lot of other stuff, Kal-Zod, Earth 2's really awesome Superman, faced Brutal in combat, and after a furious battle, showed that Brutal was just an imitation, and a cheap one at that, as his body began to deteriorate, all Spider-Man clone degradation style, and the day was finally saved. Number 3. Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman, but when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In this fear-induced state, Superman hallucinates his wife as the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks, flying Lois and what would have been John Kent into space, taking their lives, and also inadvertently causing a nuclear detonation to destroy his city, Metropolis. After suddenly losing his city, wife, and his baby, Superman goes into a pretty honestly understandable rage, bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker, and he plunges his super fist straight through the clown's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the Earth and rules it as a tyrant. He turns on and destroys his friends, is manipulated by Wonder Woman, holds nothing back, and puts the entire Earth under the control of his regime. He is a seriously hardcore version of Superman who has actually been revisited recently in John Kent's comic book story, where he even took the life of Earth 3's Ultraman pretty easily. It was kinda nuts. Number 2. Super Doom. On Earth 45, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, and Clark Kent are scientists instead of reporters, and they use their smarts to build a machine that can turn thoughts into reality, which, I gotta be honest, how the heck did they think that was a good idea? I can think of 10 things right now off the top of my head that should never become reality. Anyways, using the aforementioned thought to form machine, they tried to create a being called Superman, who would be capable of doing amazing things and who could save worlds. But when they are forced to give their idea over to Overcorp, these guys decide to rebrand and end up creating a monstrosity, Superman, the Last Knight of Tomorrow, or as he's better known to everyone else, Super Doom. With a corporate-fueled agenda of destroying all competition, Super Doom quickly becomes the strongest super being on its own planet, and then entered into the bleed space to take out all the other versions of Superman across the multiverse. Of course, bad guys never win forever, so after defeating and devouring multiple different Supermen of multiple different Earths, he was stopped by the Superman and Lex Luthor of Earth 22, who stranded him between universes. He's since been used in a few other storylines and remains one of the most formidable evil versions of Superman to this day because he didn't actually pass away. He's still out there, just like between universes. Crazy. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Bump in the Night. For starters, DC's House of Horror is basically a collection of short stories featuring different characters. They are all equally interesting and horror themed. The Possession of Billy Batson and the Last Laugh stories are particularly interesting, but for today's video, I think we want to talk about the very first one, Bump in the Night. This short story follows Martha Kent on the night Kal-El arrives on Earth. Jonathan Kent has gone out to explore what exactly caused a big bang and trail of smoke on the Kent's farm, but he doesn't come back. As Martha worries about where her husband has gone to, she goes back inside, but Martha starts hearing bumping and thumping coming from upstairs in the house. All of a sudden, a demonic humanoid child crashes through the ceiling and begins attacking her. She tries to run to the barn, but fiery beams of energy fire from the creature, blowing up the barn. She takes refuge in her truck only for the creature to land on the hood, shrieking. It throws the truck across the yard and Martha gets out wounded only for the truck to explode. The tiny little creature then flies away with the symbol of an S emblazoned on its own chest.
Number 10, DCU/DCEU. One of my all-time favorite versions of Harley Quinn, of course, comes to us from the DC live-action universe. This version is played by Margot Robbie, who I think I am quickly becoming a lifelong fan of. Every time I see a new film where Margot is involved, I pretty much love it. Okay, maybe except the first Suicide Squad film. But at the same time, I do still love parts of that film, with Margot's Harley Quinn being one of the main highlights for me. I think when it comes to Margot Robbie, just her commitment and love of the characters that she plays, no matter who they are, is what really draws me in. And her portrayal of Harley Quinn is no exception. She definitely gives it her all and really seems to love playing the character and being involved in a lot of the stunts, or at least as many of the stunts as production will allow her to participate in. She definitely also has stunt doubles for stunts, which are deemed, of course, too risky. That's very common in productions. Still, it's clear that Margot has fun as Harley, which also adds to the portrayal, as I feel like Harley Quinn is so often looking for the silver linings in her life and trying herself to have fun, even when she finds herself in a less than ideal situation. And this really rings true with Margot Robbie's portrayal. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not consider subscribing? Click that subscribe button, do it if you haven't already, because if you have, then you'll be unsubscribed, so then don't click it. But if you haven't, click it. Number 9, Bizarro Harley. Bizarro Harley didn't last too long, only a single issue. But she was memorable to me when I read her, which is why I'm including her here. I like how she basically tries to tell her off her original self here, which would be her main continuity version at the time, the version from New Earth, that version of Harley Quinn. Bizarro Harley says to her that she might actually be the Bizarro version, based on her messed up relationship with the Joker and their history and how crazy she herself is. In the end though, Harley Quinn defeats Bizarro Harley Quinn by making her contradict her own Bizarro programming, thereby causing her to self-destruct. Hence why she's only around for an issue. But still, I like the concept. Number 8, Harley Sin. Harley Sin does not get enough love in the comics. She acts as kind of a foil for Harley Quinn, or at least has in the past. In the main continuity, I believe, although with Harley Quinn comics it's always hard to tell if we're really in the main continuity or not because things can get kinda weird and kinda meta. Sin made peace with Harley. However, she recently then reappeared in the Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey comic, which I don't think is part of the main continuity because it's Black Label, but then again, it could be. And in that story, she was once again a villain to Harley, so she flipped back. Harley Sin wanted to join up with the Harley Quinn's gang of Harleys initially, attempting to join her crew, but she didn't make the cut. Number 7, Gang of Harleys. Not only are there alternate versions of Harley that exist throughout the multiverse, but even within the main continuity itself, Harley Quinn actually has alternates. Remember how I mentioned that Harley Sin once tried out for Harley Quinn's Gang of Harleys? Well, that is still a thing. Harley's Gang of Harleys is made up of other Harleys who Quinn herself handpicked. I gotta say, I love them, and I love that in the comics, this is her crew. I'm not up to date on the Harley Quinn animated series right now, I'm a little bit behind, I need to catch up, but as much as I love Harley's crew in that universe, and I really do, I hope we also get a little nod to the comic book main continuity crew she has and has had with the Gang of Harleys. The Gang of Harleys exists in the Prime Earth continuity, and currently the members include Carly Quinn, Hannah Quinn, Harvey Quinn, Harlem Quinn, Harley Queens, Bolly Quinn, and Coach. Number 6, Batman 66. Have you ever wondered what Harley Quinn would be like were she to have existed back in the 1966 Batman live action series with Adam West? Well, Wonder no longer. We have the answer to that in the form of a comic, and if you were wondering, yes, Harley Quinn does fit pretty perfectly in this world. She herself can be pretty silly, and the Batman 66 universe itself is also prone to being kinda goofy and over the top in the best of ways. So despite being created in the 90s in the animated Batman series, she actually feels right at home, I would say, in the comic based off of the live-action 60s series. Number 5. White Knight. White Knight Harley Quinn is another beast altogether. This version of the character actually has a pretty tragic backstory when it comes to a relationship with the Joker. Instead of him being a deranged criminal from the start, he actually is shown in a more sympathetic light, with it quickly becoming evident based on his and Harley's story that he was mentally unwell and simply just needed some help. After Jack, which is Joker's name here, returns to Harley, seemingly cured, Batman is the one who is more painted as the villain of the story in this reality. In the end though, Jack does give into the darkness and he ends up kinda being swallowed up by it, leaving Harley alone with 2 babies on the way. What does she do after this loss? Well, she keeps fighting. In her most recent series, White Knight Presents Harley Quinn, she becomes a psychological consultant for the GCPD, helping them to investigate a string of murders as they attempt to catch the killer, with her doing profile work for them, and also kinda like, you know, just being a vigilante. Batman even makes her a suit. Oh, I love the fashion in that series. It looks so good. Number 4. Black Label Birds of Prey. I'm not really sure where this exists in terms of the DC universe or perhaps multiverse, but I'm just gonna assume, considering it feels like it's inspired by the Birds of Prey film, that it's set in its own universe. I was really excited for this Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey comic when it was first announced. Amanda Conner and Jim Palmiotti worked on the book, and I just love them together with Harley Quinn. They do such great work. This comic was also Black Label and therefore could afford to get more raunchy than the standard DC comic fare. Here, Harley Quinn sort of teams up with the Birds of Prey to take down the Joker. Well, basically the Birds of Prey want her to leave Gotham for her own safety and their own peace of mind, whereas Harley wants to team up and kick butt, so they're not really fully united in this comic, but that's what makes it more fun. The series itself is awesome, and Harley here is also hilarious and epic, but I gotta say it was slow in regards to its release schedule from issue to issue, so that was rough if you were reading it as it came out. But if you just go back and read it now, it's pretty fantastic. Number 3. Batman Arkham. This version of Harley Quinn comes to us not from a comic or a TV series or even a film, but instead from a video game, or rather a whole series of video games. The Batman Arkham games actually played as important a role to the way Harley is presented in live action animation and comics today as her first animated appearance did in regards to shaping her first comic book appearance. When we talk about alternate versions of Harley, she really is a character where her alternate selves actually help to further define and establish the nuances of her main continuity character. Harley's appearance in the Batman Arkham games made her even more sexy and powerful, I'd say, and also saw changes to her costume that definitely influenced her comic book and live action appearances. Also, you really can't go wrong with Tara Strong or Arlene Sorkin's performances when it comes to Harley in these games. Number 2. Batman the Animated Series. Technically, this version of Harley Quinn could be described as the original Harley Quinn, voiced by Arlene Sorkin. Batman the Animated Series is where Harley Quinn first appeared. She was originally intended to be more of a smaller role, a temporary girlfriend and accomplice to Mark Hamill's Joker. However, when we talk about alternates here on Top 10 Nerd, we're usually comparing different versions of the character to their mainstay comic book counterpart. As such, I'm including Sorkin's portrayal here, despite it being the first and possibly the most iconic appearance of this character. This is always the version folks most want to see me cosplay as, to be honest. I don't have that one yet though. I should do an animated series Harley though. I love Harley. You can never have too many Harley cosplays in my... I don't have that one yet though. I should do an animated series Harley though. I love Harley. You can never have too many Harley cosplays in my mind. Number 1. Harley Quinn the Animated Series. Harley Quinn the Animated Series is probably one of the coolest versions of Harley we have thus far. Also, her series just slays me. It is so much fun, which is also probably why I love this version of Harley Quinn so much and had to give her my top spot. Harley Quinn in the animated series is voiced by Kaley Cuoco. For a while, some believe there was actually beef between Cuoco and Margot Robbie, who plays the live-action version of Harley on the big screen, but it turned out this was all fabricated and hearsay. Of course, there is always room for more Harleys, and I think these two ladies are both just happy to be playing the character. There's no real beef between them. The one thing Kaley does that differs drastically from from how Harley is usually portrayed, or rather I guess that she doesn't do, is the accent. Kaylee does not do Harley's classic Brooklyn accent. For some, this is actually a deal breaker, but I still love Kaylee's work voicing the character myself. Also, how can you not love this show? It's so good. I know I'm not caught up, but I bet it's still good.
Number 10, Earth 5 Shazam. Earth 5, or Earth S, is a simpler, kinder world. A world that is more optimistic. A world where the heroes are seen as such with hardly any faults. Basically, this is the golden age of comics. Specifically, Fawcett Comics. Here, Captain Marvel is the main superhero, which gives the world the name Thunderworld. He and his family, Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, keep the world safe from everything from the Monster Society to aliens. I'm talking like Shazam is essentially taking the place of Superman as the premier superhero of Earth. This version of Shazam worked together alongside Superman and Overman to recruit the Supermen of the universe. They all worked together, led by Captain Marvel, to defeat Ultraman and weaken Mandrake, who was killed by the Green Lanterns. Number 9, Red Sun Batman. The Batman appearing in one of the greatest Superman stories ever, Red Sun, is not some crazy powerful amalgamation of characters. In fact, I'd say he's considerably weaker than a number of alternate Batmen, but he is still Batman. In this dystopian Earth 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take down Superman. So, he stole Wonder Woman and bound her with her own lasso and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever. But alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her lasso and remove the generator powering up the lamps, and unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he'd implanted within his own small intestine. But before he passed away, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout way. Number 8, Flashpoint Cyborg. When Barry Allen Flash goes back in time to try and save his mom, he royally messes with the timeline, pretty much changing the whole DC universe. In this newly created timeline, Cyborg is America's greatest hero in place of Superman, based out of Detroit. He's the guy, but obviously he doesn't inspire the same kind of confidence as the Man of Steel because that would just be preposterous. When the Amazons and the Atlanteans go to war, Cyborg tries to gather a group of Earth's superhumans to help stop the conflict in its tracks, but it has already ravaged half of Europe. Thanks to Thomas Wayne, this timeline's Batman, refusing to join up, nobody else wants to join this group either. But then, superstar Barry Allen shows up and convinces Wayne otherwise, and the three set off to gather together an army of heroes. And they do, and it's awesome. Number 7, Dead Earth. Now, I'm not sure what the general consensus on this comic is, and quite frankly, I don't really care because I think this version of Diana of Themyscira is just absolutely insanely awesome. The comic picks up in an apocalyptic wasteland in what used to be Gotham City. Deep down in the remnants of what used to be the Batcave, Wonder Woman had been kept alive in a containment unit and was awoken by a group of humans who were running from a mutated monster known as a Hydra. After saving the humans and liberating their city, she journeys to Themyscira only to find out that the Hydra are actually her fellow Amazons mutated by atomic radiation after the Amazons had decided to go to war with the rest of humanity who had driven the Earth to its breaking point. The world had bombarded Themyscira with nuclear fire, even though Diana used the absolute limits of her abilities to try and stop that. When Superman, who fought for humanity, turned up to try and explain why he couldn't have helped Wonder Woman, we see just how powerful this Wonder Woman is. Losing complete control of herself, Wonder Woman and Superman fought each other to the point of causing a great fire that plunged the world into the apocalypse. And at the end of that fight, Wonder Woman, who was double fisting some kryptonite, brought Superman to his final rest with a hole straight through his chest. She collapsed from exhaustion and forgot everything. So when she learned of this past, Wonder Woman decided to set things right and protected what was left of humanity from what she once called her sisters. Number 6, All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman is actually a 12-issue series that sets itself apart from the rest of the DC universe by sort of being a standalone story. At the beginning of the tale, Superman saves an exploration mission to the sun that was sabotaged by Lex Luthor. But because of his overexposure to the yellow sun, he ends up developing new abilities such as the power to harness the bioelectric aura and pushing his normal abilities to unimaginable levels. But it wasn't just his powers that got a boost. His intellect, creativity, imagination, and curiosity also got boosted up to the point that he started getting new skills and trying out new experiments, even some that would allow a successor for himself to be created. That's important because while his abilities and mental acuity had been boosted up and he even became immune to green kryptonite, the overexposure to the sun also meant he was starting to slowly pass away as his cells became overloaded, causing this story to get really damn emotional. Number 5, Martian Manhunter. Look, I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. In DC 1 Million, we get a version of John Johns, or John Jones, who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall, in return, gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius level intelligence. Now, we don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because I mean, people gotta make fire on a planet, I guess. We can also probably assume John keeps his other Martians' abilities to a degree, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume that he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements, and he can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree, so there's that too. Number 4, Last Night on Earth, Joker. In Batman Last Night on Earth by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, Batman, or rather a clone of Batman created by Batman's own resurrection machine, goes out into a post-apocalyptic world completely rocked thanks to Lex Luthor. One of the first things that this new Batman finds, funnily enough, is a lantern with the head of the Joker somehow still alive and speaking inside of it. Kind of like in God of War when Kratos gets the head of Mimir that he just carries around on his hip. Batman takes this Joker lantern as a companion, and this talkative Joker keeps the Dark Knight company as he works to find a way to dethrone Omega, who is a villain that rules over the apocalyptic world using Darkseid's Omega effect. This Joker is strangely friendly and compassionate, and he is honestly a great cheerleader for Batman, which I don't think any of us expected to see. What we really didn't expect to see is that this disembodied head is given a robotic body to become Batman's new Robin. What? Number 3, Kingdom Come Shazam. In an alternate possible future, metahumans or superheroes are now hated. Because of this, Billy Batson hasn't become Shazam in years and is now a full-grown man looking a lot like his alter ego minus the cool costume and cape and powers and all that stuff. He was eventually brainwashed by Lex Luthor into believing that metahumans and even Captain Marvel, who lives inside of him, sort of, are all monsters. In time, Bruce Wayne tries to convince Billy otherwise, which eventually forces him to turn to Shazam once more, breaking open the metahuman prison and starting a massive war that puts the world at risk. Now, after a nuclear device was dropped threatening to take out thousands of people, Superman convinced Billy to help, and Shazam outraced Superman to the device using his lightning to destroy it and sacrificing himself to save both humans and metahumans, ending the hatred against superheroes once and for all in this world. Number 2, Bat Prince. Another alternate version of Batman, I know, but he belongs to probably one of my favorite alternate reality stories to come out of DC Comics, Dark Knights of Steel. This story takes place in a world of medieval fantasy where the Wayne family ruled their kingdom until the mother and father of Superman came to Earth. The L family house became rulers of the land after a horrible attack on the Wayne family. Now, as the surviving son of the Waynes, Bruce serves as both a knight and an adopted son to the L family, with his network of Robins and his super brilliant mind. But as the world is at each other's throats, this Bat Prince learns about the actions that led to his birth and the powers he now possesses as a half-Kryptonian Dark Knight. Dark Knights of Steel that came out last year in 2022 just has so many interesting and fresh takes on classic DC characters. It's fresh and fun and flirty, and I got a variant cover of the first issue and it looks so sweet, and maybe one day I'll get to show you guys. Definitely read Dark Knights of Steel. And finally, in at number 1, it's Green Lantern Earth 1. This Green Lantern focused story is one that I actually really like. It brushes over a lot of things very easily, but it made me care about the Green Lanterns, and that's something I didn't think was ever gonna happen. Sorry. It almost feels like a dark sci-fi take on Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns. Essentially, in this story, Hal Jordan is on the moon with a crew of workers who mine for metal when he comes across a crashed alien ship containing the Green Lantern ring, a Green Lantern battery, the corpse of Abin Sur, and a robot called a Manhunter. Hal claimed the ring, just taking it off of the alien corpse, and use it to fight the Manhunter that sprung on him. What had happened is that the Manhunter robots were created by the Guardians of the Universe to take out the Green Lanterns as the Lanterns had grown uncontrollable, and they were pretty successful, but also grew out of control, putting the galaxy in peril and leaving the Green Lantern core broken and spread extremely thin. Hal meets up with an equally inexperienced Kilowag, and they go across the universe trying to rally together any Green Lanterns they can. It all feels like, the best way I saw it described was as if Christopher Nolan and Ridley Scott teamed up and made a Green Lantern story. It does feel like that, and it's just such a cool and fresh take. Number 10, Calvin Ellis. Instead of Kal-El landing on a farm in Kansas, a black Kryptonian named Calvin Ellis was sent to Earth to escape his planet's destruction. Nevertheless, he didn't grow up trying to fit into society, as he instead became very ambitious. What do I mean by that? Well, Calvin Ellis worked hard enough to eventually become the President of the United States, giving him a position that allowed him to better protect his world both politically and physically. He still carried his role as Superman and even became a multiversal hero when he teamed up with the other versions of the character during the Infinite Frontier era. Calvin Ellis gained political power as well as his own incredible Kryptonian abilities, not to mention that he reprogrammed the alien intelligence Brainiac to help him in his duties. He's also a talented boxer. So there's that as well. Number 9, Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going to go back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. In the dark multiverse, however, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she didn't expect to happen was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected. Assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the dark multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, Lex Luthor's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he finally does return. The whole story is tragic, but it's also really cool. And to maybe check out part 1 to make sure I didn't miss any of your favorite alternate DC Universe superheroes. Number 8, Batman Who Laughs. While the Batman Who Laughs was Bruce Wayne from Earth -22 of the Dark Multiverse, he basically becomes the most powerful alternate version of the Joker and Batman ever. Everything about this Batman remained relatively the same until the day the Joker found out he was going to pass away, and so he decided to take everyone with him. Joker took down a large number of Batman's rogues gallery, including Catwoman. He caused the passing of Commissioner Gordon, and he paralyzed Batman, forcing the Dark Knight to watch as the Joker took the lives of countless innocent people. Once Batman regained his movement though, he lost it and put the Joker to rest. Now, as his one last sick joke, a toxin in the Joker's heart escaped his body, infecting Batman and turning him into the most terrifying Joker-Batman hybrid you have ever seen. With all the intelligence and physical ability of Batman mixed with the insanity and psychosis of the Joker, the Batman Who Laughs is off the chain. He has a book on how to destroy the multiverse, as well as a real-world comic book that lays out the structure of the universe. He has a pack of metal cards that can warp reality, he has a pack of feral Jokerized Robins, and he can corrupt people to his side with his Joker toxin, like Shazam as an example. He wiped out all the heroes of his universe and several others and put together a squad of evil Batmen who he used to become one of the biggest threats in the multiverse, almost bringing the end of everything. He's not better, but he's cool. Number 7. Furnace. Before the Martians became the Martians, they were an incredibly violent and powerful race called the Burning. The Guardians of the Universe experimented on the Burning and put genetic blocks in place to make them afraid of the fire that they used as their most powerful weapon. That's why Martian Manhunter has a fear of fire. Now, after the Justice League was trapped and taken down in Obsidian Age Atlantis, John Jones blamed himself for his friend's passing because his fear of fire completely overtook him. So, he recruits Scorch to help him overcome his fear, and he would use his telepathy to help her deal with her own problems. Now, unfortunately, in doing this, he also broke the genetic blocks, allowing John to become the incredibly dangerous Furnace, with all of his original powers boosted in potential, especially his telepathy, plus an insane level of pyrokinesis. Number 6. The Drowned. Bryce Wayne was the Batwoman of the Dark Multiverse Earth 11, and this vigilante had a romantic relationship with a certain Sylvester Kyle. When Kyle lost his life to rogue metahumans, it flicked a switch inside of Bryce, and she decided to systematically take down every single metahuman she could find. The craziest thing is that she did just that, wiping out every single metahuman who walked on land. But Bryce didn't think about the metahumans of the sea. Just 18 months after taking out the last land-based metahuman, Aqua Woman and the Atlanteans revealed themselves and returned to the surface from years of self-imposed exile. While they came in peace, Bryce had such a mistrust of anyone, especially these Atlanteans that were obviously also metahumans. When peace talks devolved to an all-out war, Bryce modified her human form with biochemical augmentations, like the ability to control water, breathing underwater, healing faster, and bolstering her muscular, skeletal, and bodily tissue density. She gave herself a kind of dark hydrokinesis which could corrupt those fighting against her into ravenous sea beasts under her command, and designed her own army of hybridized sea creatures called Dead Water, all of which was bolstered up by the trident that she pried from the cold hands of a completely decimated Aqua Woman. She then drowned the world, and it was then that she was contacted by the Batman Who Laughs. Number 5. Cyborg Batman. Yes, there is a Batman-Cyborg hybrid who is part of the Batman Who Laughs Dark Knights, and yes, he is terrifyingly awesome. Murder Machine first appears in Dark Days the Casting in the Dark Multiverse Earth -44. In this world, this evil Batman cyborg comes about after the passing of Alfred Pennyworth in the Batcave by a group of Batman's villains. As Bruce Wayne's father figure and closest friend, Bruce took this loss hard, and he blamed himself. He asked Cyborg to make an Alfred Cyborg AI called Alfred Protocol in order to help Bruce, like Alfred used to do. Unfortunately, like most AI in fiction, it went kinda mad with its directive of protecting Batman. It spread like a virus, took down all of the villains and then all of the heroes, and even took over Batman's own body since it didn't believe that he could protect himself well enough. And Batman just didn't want to be separated from Alfred, so he was totally cool with it. Number 4. Devastator. On alternate Earth -1, Batman and Superman were pals and everything was dandy. Until one day Superman changed and rampaged, turning on humanity. Superman took out almost everyone, and Batman tried his best to help bring his friend back. But once Superman took out Lois Lane and then cut off Batman's arm, there was really no going back from that point. Batman decided to inject himself with the Doomsday virus, turning him into the Devastator, powering him up enough to take out Superman but also making him lose all sympathy. He still retains all the knowledge of Bruce Wayne plus the fighting skill, and he acts as the muscle for the Dark Knights. Truly a monstrous and terrifying Batman. Number 3. Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. Well, in the Dark Multiverse, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she never expected was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected, and so, assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the Dark Multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, sure, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he does finally return. The whole story is pretty tragic, but that also makes it one of the best ones to come out of the Dark Multiverse, in my opinion. Number 2, the Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is arguably one of the most dangerous versions of Batman who has ever lived, other than Batman himself. If you don't know yet, he is a Dark Multiverse version of Batman who took down the Joker, but inadvertently infected himself with a strain of Joker toxin. The resulting transformation turns this version of Bruce Wayne into an amalgamation of Joker and Batman. All the intelligence and resourcefulness and martial skill of Batman mixed with the buck-wild, psychotic, murderous mind of the Joker. He is pure chaos and destruction, and he lays waste to his own Bat family and the whole Justice League. He has a pack of Jokerized Robins, and he is the leader of the Dark Knights. He is also a lieutenant of the Dark God Barbados, and he convinced Perpetua, the original creator of the multiverse, to choose him as her lieutenant, eventually acquiring cosmic power and becoming an even bigger threat than even Perpetua herself. And finally, in at number 1, it's Saint Batman. As some of you may know, when Bane broke the back of Bruce Wayne in the Batman Nightfall storyline, Bruce was briefly replaced as the Dark Knight in favor of John Paul Valley, otherwise known as the somewhat extreme crime fighter Azrael. Eventually, the status quo was returned and Bruce took the mantle of Batman back, but as you know, in the Dark Multiverse, everything can and will happen, and so of course, we see the dark outcome of what would happen if Bruce never got to take back his cowl. In the Dark Multiverse version of Batman Nightfall, John Paul Valley doesn't return the mantle, and instead, believing himself to be the best successor to the Batman name, he defeats Bruce Wayne and the entire Bat family. Over the next 30 years, John Paul, now going by Saint Batman, has destroyed and rebuilt the city of Gotham. He stripped Bruce of his arms and legs and keeps Bruce on life support, just trying to get Bruce to admit that John Paul was the right choice for the role of Batman. Unfortunately, Saint Batman had crossed the wrong people, and he suffered a pretty brutal defeat at the hands of Lady Shiva, the son of Bane, and a restored cyborg Batman. Coming in at number 10, it's Earth 32. Unexpected. That's probably how I would describe the Batman from Earth 32. Now, the original Batman of this universe was Bruce Wayne, who also became a Green Lantern. But when he left the Earth to serve in the Green Lantern Corps, it left the role of Batman open. And who would have guessed that of all the characters, Alexander Luthor would be the one to answer the call? First appearing in Lex Luthor Year of the Villain #1 from November 2019, this Batman was partnered up with Super Martian, a cross between a Martian like Martian Manhunter and a Kryptonian like Superman. As you can imagine, they were a powerful combo. They took up a base of operations in what looked like the Batcave mixed with the Fortress of Solitude and were assisted by Fred, their awesome robotic butler. Thanks to to having the Martian as his partner, Lex Batman was well acquainted with telepathy, and while it caused him some pretty bad headaches, it was also instrumental in helping deal with the Prime Earth Lex Luthor when he showed up. Number 9. Blood League. Now, we have talked about the vampire Batman who appears in the Elseworld Batman Vampire Trilogy, and that version of Batman brings us an incredible story. While that vampire Batman inspired the Batman of Earth 43, their stories are slightly different in some crucial ways. For example, the Batman of Earth 43 intentionally sought out the dark demonic gift in order to face Dracula, instead of being unwillingly given the vampire curse from a good vampire. Batman defeated Dracula, but the curse proved too much for Bruce to handle, and he gave in to the full curse and embraced his new bloodlust. With someone like Batman as a crazed vampire, the other heroes of this Earth didn't last too long before they too were also turned into vampires, which is when, together, they formed the Blood League. I wouldn't call them heroes though. This superpowered group of vampires did enough damage on their own world that they decided to leave it and attack the planet Rann, and they were later coerced into invading the universe of Earth 13. Eventually, Batman and the Blood League even played a part in the death metal event. Number 8. Deceased. While Bruce Wayne did play a part in DC's answer to Marvel Zombies, Deceased, it was his successor that was arguably much more important. When the anti-life equation techno-organic virus infected a huge number of the Earth, Bruce got infected when he had to fight off the infected Nightwing and Tim Drake Robin. Using Mr. Freeze's cryosuit, he was able to slow down the virus long enough to study it and give information and say goodbye to the remaining Justice League and his son, Damian Wayne, who would go on to take his father's mantle at the age of just 13 years old. The fight against the anti-living eventually reached cosmic scales. The heroes eventually found themselves facing Erebos, the one who was responsible for the entire anti-living outbreak. Now, Deceased is a long comic book run, so I can't give you all the details in this short little time, but Damian essentially grows up over the run of the comic, stepping fully into his role as Batman and creating a relationship with the new Wonder Woman, Cassie. Alfred Pennyworth eventually becomes the new Spectre and bringing a cure for the anti-living, but right near the end, Damian organizes the final attack on Erebos in Limbo. Now, in an all-white batsuit that looks amazing, Damian put the life equation, the opposite to the anti-life equation, inside of himself, and he decided to detonate it inside of Erebos to destroy him and the anti-living from the inside out. He makes the ultimate sacrifice, and it's pretty awesome. Number 7. B-Rex. Some of the coolest stuff has come from the dark multiverse, and of all the alternate characters to come out of it, a Bruce Wayne who transferred his consciousness into the mechanical T-Rex in his Batcave has to be one of the most awesome. Now, as a Batman T-Rex, Batmanosaurus Rex, or just B-Rex if you prefer, Batman decided that he has been wasting time, not just completely wiping out his villains, and so he goes on a dinosaur rampage through Arkham Asylum, chomping and crushing inmates and staff alike. B-Rex gets recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, just like a bunch of other Dark Knights, and he was involved in the invasion of the regular multiverse and was even important to the revival of the Batman Who Laughs into the Darkest Night. Unfortunately, during the final battle, B-Rex and Batmage face off against Solomon Grundy, who had the strength to stop them both. Number 6. The Final Knight. The Final Knight is actually Duke Thomas, who was a sidekick to the Batman that the demon Barbados used as a gateway into the multiverse, and who was ultimately transformed into Barbados the Dragon of the End. Now this Batman, alongside the rest of his league, who were also transformed into dragons, brought the collapse of their world, and Duke fled into the multiverse to survive. Duke eventually returns to face these dragons, only to be saved by that universe's Nightwing, who brings Duke to the surviving members of the Justice League, who band together and give almost all of their lives to fight the dragons, with Duke being the one to bring down his old mentor. After slaying the Dragon of the End, Duke turned his hide into crazy awesome armor and wielded Nightwing's massive battle axe. Now calling himself the Final Knight, he escapes his crumbling reality and sets out into the dark multiverse to become one of its only real heroes. Number 5. The Batman Who Frags. Yes, we are sticking with the dark multiverse still, and I will for the next point too, but I promise that is not a negative, and I can prove that to you by telling you that this version of Batman is a mix with Lobo. In an attempt to gain their powers, this Batman injected himself with Zarnian DNA, Zarnians being the race that Lobo is the sole survivor of. This did totally give Batman the insane super strength and healing factor that we often attribute to Lobo, but it had the maybe expected downside of completely changing Bruce's personality as well. He became much more aggressive, stabby, and volatile, and he also picked up one hell of a potty mouth. Batman also gained a much more similar look to Lobo as well, and I would be a liar if I said that this guy didn't look absolutely amazing. He's so cool. Unfortunately though, he isn't as cool as the real Lobo, and couldn't quite cut it when he was sent to capture the guy, instead finding himself trapped in a universe called Loboland, where he was forced to face a Lobo Justice League. Yes, it is as crazy as it sounds. Number 4, Dark Father. Okay, last dark multiverse Batman on this list, I promise, but also arguably one of the most alarming. That's because this version of Batman brought about the end of Darkseid, and in doing so, gained the evil god's abilities and even took on his appearance. He mastered the anti-life equation and controlled a massive army of para-Robins instead of the usual para-demons. He gave up the anti-life equation to his Superman, but he still went on to work with the Batman Who Laughs and invaded Earth Zero. Dark Father defeated the Teen Titans, the Titans, and Superman, which resulted in the destruction of the moon. He then built a new Apokolips inside of the core of the burnt out sun, and he kept Superman and many others imprisoned there until Batman, Wonder Woman, and Harley Quinn were able to come to the rescue, freeing Superman, who punched Dark Father into space. There he goes, look at him. Number 3, Red Sun. The Batman appearing in one of the greatest Superman stories ever, Red Sun, is not some crazy powerful amalgamation of characters. In fact, I'd say that he's considerably weaker than a number of alternate Batman on this list, but he is still Batman. In this dystopian Earth 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them, all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take down the Man of Steel. So, he stole Wonder Woman, bound her with her own lasso, and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever, but alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her own lasso and remove the generator powering the lamps. Unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized like everyone else who opposed Superman, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he implanted in his own small intestine. But before he passed, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout way. Number 2, Flashpoint Batman. With the loss of his son at the hands of a mugger, in the alternate Flashpoint timeline, Thomas Wayne was driven to send criminals to the afterlife as the ruthless vigilante Batman. His first victim would be Joe Chill, the very mugger who ended the life of his son. Now, originally planning to poison Joe, Thomas went the much more reasonable route of pummeling with his bare hands. This act drove his wife, Martha Wayne, into insanity, cutting a grin into her own face and becoming this timeline's version of the Joker. Thomas has a more important mission to him than his war on crime though, restoring his son's life. He meets the Flash, helps restore his powers, learns of the alternate timeline where Bruce actually lived, and assembles an alternate timeline Justice League, and together they restore the original timeline. Thomas eventually enters into the current DC timeline, and wishing for his son to stop being Batman, he teams up with Bane to completely break Bruce, but it fails. Since his introduction in Flashpoint Volume 2 Number 1 in July of 2011, Flashpoint Batman, Thomas Wayne, has been a complex, interesting, and infamously fan-loved character. And finally, in at number 1, Owlman. The crime syndicate of America hails from the strength-obsessed Earth 3, and is a twisted, evil version of the main universe Justice League of America. The Batman of this villainous league isn't a Batman at all. In fact, he isn't even Bruce Wayne. No, He is Thomas Wayne Jr., also known as Owlman. Thomas Wayne Jr. was the eldest son of the Waynes, yes, the older brother of Bruce in this world. He believed that his parents were managing their wealth poorly, and for that reason alone, Thomas decided that they needed to go. He tried to convince his younger brother Bruce to help him in this endeavor, but when the time came to do the deed, Bruce was pretty hesitant and attempted to dissuade Thomas. Perceiving this as a sign of weakness, Thomas took Bruce to the afterlife while his butler and servant, Alfred, who would become known as the Outsider, ended the lives of their parents. Becoming the villain Owlman, Thomas asserted power, dominance, and control over the city of Gotham, forcing it to be under his control. There is a lot more to this Owlman, but what we need to know is that he, alongside the crime syndicate of America, could not save their world from the Monitor, and so they fled it, invading the main DC universe and bringing us the Forever Evil story, which is probably one of the most awesome stories to come out of the new 52.
In its 10th Bat Baby. In Batman number 147, published in 1962, we are introduced to Bat Baby, offering a glimpse into the distinctiveness of Batman during the Silver Age of comics. Contrasting the modern portrayal of Batman as a brooding and conflicted loner, this story reveals a peculiar side of the Caped Crusader. The narrative unfolds as Batman and Robin infiltrate a criminal hideout, initially gaining the upper hand. However, the criminals manage to escape when their mad scientist deploys a de-aging ray on Batman. Basically, think sky-high pacifier, regressing him into a 4-year-old child. Remarkably though, Batman retains his adult intellect and physical strength. Rather than being dismayed by this transformation, Bruce embraces it, donning a miniaturized cape, cowl, and Batman-themed overalls to become Bat Baby. The criminals attempted to ridicule him, but Bat Baby uses his enhanced abilities to foil their plans, so yeah. It is worth noting that de-aging superheroes was a curious trend in this era as well, with characters like Superboy and Wonder Girl being popular variations of Superman and Wonder Woman. However, this takes that to a literal extreme. The concept of a baby Bruce Wayne fighting crime did not have lasting popularity, and Bat Baby remains a singular appearance in DC Comics, which was in Batman number 147. But I think we can all kind of appreciate that. In at 9, Satan Batman. In this future incarnation, Damian Wayne assumes the role of Batman following the demise of the second Batman. Possessing supernatural abilities and the willingness to take lives, Damian believed that resorting to lethal methods was necessary to combat crime, setting him apart from any other members of the Bat family. Despite the efforts of Father James Gordon and Alfred to guide him towards a different path, Damian remained steadfast in his convictions. A heated argument with his father resulted in Damian severely injuring him with a dangerously close stab wound, leading to his expulsion from the Batcave by Alfred. During his tenure as Batman, Damian faced a formidable adversary in the form of Michael Lane, the former Azrael, driven by an unhinged obsession to destroy Batman under the influence of Simon Hurt. As chaos engulfed the planet, Gotham became a quarantine city overrun by Joker-affected inhabitants, and Talia al Ghul, Damian's mother, ordered the city's annihilation through a nuclear strike authorized by Simon Hurt, who had risen to the highest echelons of the American government. Remarkably, Damian survived the cataclysmic blast due to a pact he had made with Dr. Hurt, so I don't know what Simon was thinking, really, okay? He didn't think that one through. In at 8, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is a combination of Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' death at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. All hail the North! His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, basically the Canadian FBI, and was ambushed and killed by poachers a short time after Logan's arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, after that, the Canadian Super Soldier program, and it was here that Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his meta-mutant nature. And since this is an amalgam, they are both considered metas and mutants because that's basically the same thing between the universes. The Weapon X project was terminated due to its dual failure. Logan was ineffective because he actually had a conscience, but this didn't stop him from being pretty damn bad. Having all the powers of Logan, as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, and I'm not even kidding, this is in essence a superpowered Batman, which I think we all should know is pretty dope, although I wonder if he has a claw credit card. And at 7, Batmite. Batmite was a mischievous imp who appeared as a small childlike man donning an ill-fitting Batman costume with a black lightning bolt symbol. Hailing from another dimension, Batmite possessed nearly limitless magical powers. In his dimension, the resident imps idolized the heroes of Batman's world and would mimic their actions and adventures. Batman happened to be Batmite's favorite hero, obviously, leading to the imp visiting him on multiple occasions, often orchestrating peculiar events just to witness his hero in action. Despite his admiration though, Batmite was more of a bothersome pest than a supervillain, often realizing his actions had upset Batman and then leaving him alone. During his first visit to Earth, Batmite used his magical abilities to enhance Batman and Robin's crime-fighting efforts, albeit causing more trouble than assistance, but Batman eventually requested that Batmite apprehend the criminals himself. After fulfilling Batman's request, the imp complied and departed, vowing to return someday. Batmite did reappear later, this time causing chaos, not only for Batman and Robin, but also for the newly introduced Batwoman. So yeah, I mean, he's an imp, and imps are always shifty, okay? We know that. It's been a thing. And at 6, Super Batman. When Dr. Wayne and Mrs. Wayne discover a baby named Kal-El in a mysterious spacecraft, they choose to raise him as their own child. They give him the name Bruce and instill him with a deep respect for all individuals regardless of social class or race. Mrs. Wayne, with her nurturing love, cultivates his heart, while Thomas Wayne, though emotionally reserved, proves to be a kind and compassionate father. Recognizing Kal-El's incredible abilities, his speed, agility, and unbreakable bones, Dr. Wayne focuses on pushing Bruce's mental limits rather than his physical ones, since, that's not really an issue. He imparts Bruce with the belief that cowards and bullies resort to violence, but Bruce, as someone exceptional, should aspire to be something higher, something better. Following the tragedy of his parents' death, Bruce withdraws from the world, finding solace in his parents' mansion. Consumed by a profound hatred for violence and death, the haunting images of death torment his sanity. However, one fateful day, a group of robbers invade his home. Bruce, unleashing his powers, brutally attacks them, tearing them apart with his heat vision. It is in this moment that Bruce realizes the potential of his abilities and resolves to utilize his powers for a greater purpose and adopts the identity of Batman, a symbol of justice and protection. So basically, it's if Superman was Bruce Wayne, which is dope as hell. It's from Superman Speeding Bullets, in case you were wondering. Check it out, it's actually really cool. Halfway through into number 5, John Paul Valley. John Paul Valley, also known as Azrael, was a vigilante who once operated in Gotham City. During a short period, he temporarily assumed the mantle of Batman after the original Dark Knight was incapacitated by Bane. However, his time as Batman was marred by a descent into insanity, leading to dire consequences. As Batman, John Paul succumbed to the darkness within himself, unleashing a brutal and merciless brand of justice upon minor criminals. He inflicted permanent damage to his adversaries, leaving them crippled and beyond recovery, and one such instance was when he ruthlessly assaulted the Tallyman, mistaking him for the original Batman and retaliating for an attempted assassination. In his tumultuous tenure as Batman, John Paul also thwarted the Trigger Twins during a train heist and confronted Mr. Freeze at the Gotham morgue. These confrontations further showcased his unpredictable and aggressive nature as he struggled to maintain control over his actions. Ultimately, John Paul's time as Batman came to an end as he was forcibly removed from the role, but he returned to his original identity as Azrael. His tenure as Dark Knight serves as a cautionary tale, but also he went insane and started seeing Batmite, but not the real Batmite. It's a whole other thing. It's weird. Man, it's weird. And at 4, Vampire Batman. As Batman investigates a series of gruesome deaths in Gotham City, only to discover that the killer is none other than Dracula, the legendary vampire. Not even a joke, actually a thing. Batman teams up with a rogue vampire named Tanya to stop Dracula and his brood from terrorizing the city, but to do so, Tanya provides Batman with a blood substitute after turning him into a vampire to spare him from the cycle of death and killing that comes with being bitten, because you have to drink blood in order to keep living, so they give him a blood substitute to kind of stop that so he has it inside himself. And in order to destroy Dracula's minions, Batman lures them into the Batcave where Tanya and his followers engage them in combat. Batman detonates multiple explosives in the cave, destroying the Wayne Manor and exposing the cave to sunlight, which ultimately kills all the vampires within it. Batman then confronts Dracula on his own and impales the vampire lord on a tree that has been struck by lightning, because this is supernatural and you need something more than just chopping their heads off. This act, however, comes at the cost of Batman's humanity as Dracula drains the last of his blood. Nevertheless, Batman assured his friend Alfred that he had nothing to fear, because as Batman with new vampiric powers, he will live on forever. But I'm pretty sure that this doesn't doesn't go well, and I'm pretty sure he tries to take over the world. Don't quote me on that, but if you want to know for yourself, check out Batman and Dracula Red Reign. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Elliot Ness. Elliot Ness, a dedicated federal agent, was entrusted with the formidable task of dismantling the criminal empire of Al Capone during the era of Prohibition in Chicago. And this is also a real thing. This actually happened. But in this story, he was leading a team comprising of Danny Rasher, Frank Basil, and George Kochen. They became renowned as the Untouchables, earning the moniker bestowed upon them by the press. Despite their unwavering determination, they found themselves constantly constrained by legal limitations in their pursuit of justice. Driven by an unyielding desire to rid the city of crime, though, Ness eventually adopted a clandestine alter ego and transformed into the Batman. Operating under the cover of darkness, his vigilante persona straddled the fine line between law enforcement and vigilantism. This dual role allowed him to operate outside of the confines of the law, using unconventional means to bring down the criminals who eluded traditional justice. But since he was actually a federal agent, he was able to, do things enough so that they couldn't just say, hey, he's a vigilante, this doesn't count. Elliot Ness, the federal agent turned into a masked crusader, undertook the mantle of Batman to confront the criminal underworld both within and outside the boundaries of the law, embodying a symbol of unwavering justice, but who also hunts Kronos with Dean Winchester on the weekends. But ultimately, in at number 2, Zur-En-Arrh. The enigmatic phrase Zur-En-Arrh began appearing throughout the streets and dark alleys of Gotham City, often accompanying Batman's encounters with criminals like the Joker. As time passed, the phrase continued to manifest, typically as graffiti in the background, until one fateful encounter with the Black Glove, who shattered Batman's mind. Various leader Simon Hurt exploited a deep-seated psychological trauma within Batman, triggering a mental breakdown. In the wake of this devastating event, it was unveiled that Batman had constructed a backup personality dormant within his subconscious for years, awaiting the activation code Zur-En-Arrh. This alternate persona transformed Bruce into a deranged Batman that called himself Zur-En-Arrh, which is a twisted reflection of his former self. Empowered by the persona of Zur-En-Arrh, Batman confronted the Black Glove at Arkham Asylum, where they sought to wager his life in a treacherous gambling game. He also faced off against the Joker, but despite his valiant efforts, he ultimately succumbed to defeat, entombed alive within the asylum's graveyard. That's so messed up. That's insane, dude. God. And finally, in at number 1, Lovecraft Batman. After witnessing the brutal death of his parents during childhood, Bruce Wayne embarked on a relentless quest spanning 2 decades to unravel the mysteries of criminal behavior. However, everything takes a dramatic turn when he, along with his trusted companions, venture to the Antarctic in search of an expedition team led by the eccentric socialite Oswald Cobblepot. What awaits Bruce in this frozen realm, though, is a peculiar sight. Cobblepot wandering alone in the icy wilderness, while one of his crewmen, Grendon, had transformed into a lifeless yet animated corpse, unearthing a creature trapped within the frozen depths. Driven by the sense of duty, Bruce seized the opportunity to bring Grendon and the unearthed creature back to Gotham under his custody. However, as the backdrop of the crime-ridden roaring 20s sets the stage, Bruce becomes entangled in a web of connections that link Gotham's dark past to his own father, his parents' death, and a slain scientist named Kirk Longstrom, who possesses the ability to communicate with bats. Through his investigations, Bruce discovers that he alone possesses the power to thwart the sinister cult of Ghoul, who seek to bring out the demise of Gotham and the world itself. Basically, this is Lovecraft Batman, okay? Think Cthulhu but Batman, and that's what you get.
Number 10, Red Sun Superman. Instead of landing in America, Red Sun Superman landed in the Soviet Union, and that allowed the Soviets to weaponize him instead of allowing Clark Kent to live the normal life he traditionally has. He received severe training that not even the original Superman underwent, as Red Sun Superman was always meant to become a weapon. This allowed him to become quite strong as he paired his severe training with his new communist sense of duty. If the training he underwent wasn't enough to prove his power, though, Superman advanced the Soviet Union to almost worldwide control without resorting to war, and he virtually eliminated poverty and disease. This powerful version of Superman is a much more skilled Superman, as that's what he was raised to be, but it was his ability to eventually realize the fault in his own actions and allow the world to become a utopia that kind of puts him a cut above. I don't want to give much of this story away, but if you haven't read it, man, the ending, it'll just kind of knock your socks off. You should definitely read it. Number 9, Ultraman. Who would have thought that a Superman who is just a giant man baby would be one of the more powerful versions of the character? Anyone who has read the Crime Syndicate or Forever Evil stories would probably know this. Ultraman is the Superman of Earth 3, where strength and power are held above everything else. Because of this, the moral ideals that normally hold back Superman are completely gone for Ultraman. Like all evil Superman, he does not hold back at all. But unlike most other Supermen, Ultraman's relationship with Kryptonite is quite different. Instead of weakening the Kryptonian, Kryptonite gives him a crazy significant boost to his power when he crushes it up and inhales it. It's actually kind of terrifying, to be completely honest. Fortunately though, for the heroes of the world, he is depowered by the sun, which caused him to move the moon to block it out when he and the Crime Syndicate of America invaded the Prime DC continuity. Number 8, Calvin Ellis. Instead of Kal-El landing on a farm in Kansas, a black Kryptonian named Calvin Ellis was sent to Earth to escape his planet's destruction. Nevertheless, he didn't grow up trying to fit into society, as he instead became very ambitious. What do I mean? Well, Calvin Ellis worked hard enough to eventually become the President of the United States, giving him a position that allowed him to better protect his world both politically and physically. He still carried his role of Superman and even became a multiversal hero when he teamed up with the other versions of the character during the Infinite Frontier era. Kind of like Red Sun Superman, Calvin Ellis gained political power as well as his own incredible abilities, not to mention that he reprogrammed the alien intelligence Brainiac to help him in his duties. He's also a talented boxer, so there's that. Number 7, Electric Superman. During the 90s, to make Superman more interesting, I guess, DC decided that instead of his normal powers, they would give him Superman energy-based abilities. It instantly makes me wonder who would win in a fight between classic Supes or this guy. This Superman needed to wear a containment suit that helped him regulate his new powers. He could turn back into Clark Kent at will, but at the cost of losing the ability to actually use these new powers. This version of Superman also didn't have the traditional super strength that we'd expect. Instead, he could use energy fields to lift incredibly heavy objects, which is kind of the same as the regular Superman, but wait, there's also more. He could also split his body into two so that he could perform different tasks, he could teleport, manipulate energy, he had molecular control, and even more. But then, just as a little bit of icing on the cake, he's also immune to kryptonite attacks and red solar energy, which is a big boon for any alternate Superman. Number 6, Val Zod. Val Zod is sort of like the third Superman of Earth 2. He was also saved from Krypton's destruction, and after the passing of Kal-El during an invasion of Darkseid, it seemed that Kal came back stronger and unimpeded by morals, now serving Darkseid under the name Brutal. Turns out though that this was actually just a clone created by Darkseid, and he was eventually defeated by Val Zod. That's probably largely to do with the fact that Val here is a man who values intelligence over strength. He has a wealth of knowledge gained through years of Kryptonian study and is possibly smarter than all humans. Val Zod is stronger because he knows how to use the energy fields that are powered by the yellow sun. In that regard, he was powerful enough to defeat Brutal, who was said to be stronger than the original Superman himself. Number 5, All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman is actually a 12-issue series that sets itself apart from the rest of the DC universe by sort of being a standalone story. At the beginning of the tale, Superman saves an exploration mission to the sun that was sabotaged by Lex Luthor. But because of his overexposure to the yellow sun, he ends up developing new abilities such as the power to harness his bioelectric aura and pushing his normal abilities to unimaginable levels. But it wasn't just his powers that got a boost. His intellect, creativity, imagination, and curiosity also got boosted up to the point that he started getting new skills and trying out new experiments, even some that would allow a successor for himself to be created. That's important because while his abilities and mental acuity had been boosted up and he even became immune to green kryptonite, the overexposure to the sun also meant that he was starting to slowly pass away as his cells became overloaded, causing this story to get really damn emotional. Number 4, Strange Visitor Superman. Okay, before we start, Technically, this Superman is not canon, but he is truly one of the more powerful versions of the character. In his story, Superman outlives everything in the universe, living for literally billions and billions of years. He lives so long and gets so powerful that he gains new abilities like being able to split himself into thousands of copies that allow the hero to do what he does best throughout the universe. He outlives all the gods, cosmic entities, mortals, angels, demons, and everything. He watches countless civilizations rise and fall and learns an insane amount of skills like telepathy. He absorbs ridiculous amounts of energy, learns magic and strange sciences through all his copies, and then reabsorbs them at the end of everything. He can fly faster than the entropic waves of the end of the universe and can even manipulate the fabric of reality through sheer strength. Number 3. Quantum Superman. Alan Adam is Captain Atom, or the Quantic Superman of Earth 4. He's basically a fusion of Dr. Manhattan and Superman. Sort of. Adam obtained his powers when he was present at an experimental uranium engine that was being tested, which then exploded, turning him into a disembodied mind with no natural division in his perception of time, meaning he perceives the past and the future as a single entity. He has some insane abilities. He has the ability to change his own size, levitate, and telekinetically restructure matter, which he used to construct himself a new physical body after his original body was destroyed. Using quantum superposition, he is able to generate copies of himself. He's able to perceive and manipulate reality on at least an 8th dimensional level, and also possesses quantum sense, making him capable of knowing potentially everything. He is also responsible for merging the minds of both Superman and Ultraman in order to operate the next spot on this list. Number 2. Cosmic Armor Superman. Cosmic Armor Superman is basically a thought robot that eventually became one of the strongest versions of Superman, even though it might be one of the weirdest ones of all time, and depending on your viewpoint, you may not count him as a version of Superman at all. I respect that viewpoint, but he always comes up when people talk about the strongest versions of Superman, so here he is. This creature is somewhat strange in the sense that it isn't quite human, but it isn't quite artificial as well. The Thought Robot was created so that Superman and the antimatter universe Ultraman together could battle something stronger than they could ever normally face on their own. After the battle was done, the Thought Robot eventually merged with the entire universe's consciousness, but let me just list the powers that he has here. His powers include reactive evolution, quantum manipulation, plot manipulation, energy manipulation, reality warping, space and time manipulation, immortality, matter manipulation, fourth wall awareness, and a bunch of powers that we can't even imagine. And number 1, Superman Prime. Superman Prime, or Superman 1 million, debuted during the DC 1 million event. This version of Superman stuck around Earth till the end of the 21st century, but after all of those he grew to love passed away, he handed off the Superman mantle to his successor and then went off into space from the 22nd century all the way to the 700th century. He gained godlike abilities and could even bestow his power on others, which he did when he returned to Earth and his descendants. But this guy also spent 15,000 years inside the sun and was drenched in its yellow radiation to become an even stronger version than he already was. He essentially became a god in his own right due to the fact that his exposure to the sun for thousands of years allowed him to increase his powers exponentially. Superman Prime became faster and stronger than any of his other versions, and his powers were increased to unthinkable levels.
In at 10, Jim Gordon. In the wake of Batman's apparent death against the Joker, plans for a new Batman were discussed. With Powers International laying the groundwork for a Batman-inspired task force, their first candidate chosen to model the program was Jim Gordon, who was initially hesitant to fill Batman's shoes but eventually agreed. Going through intense government training and getting surgical muscle implants, Gordon was given the first model of the new Batman robot armor, which he nicknamed Rookie, and took to the streets as the new Batman. By complete chance, he finds Bruce Wayne and informs him that he has taken up the reins as Batman, and as Gordon hears several different reports about Bruce Wayne being found dead throughout Gotham, he works with Batman to figure out that a Batman from an alternate dark universe, known as the Batman Who Laughs, is the one responsible. Tracking him down, Gordon seeks help from his estranged son, James Jr. However, another dark version of Batman arrives and introduces himself as the Grim Knight. But it's certainly jarring to see Batman go from this big bulky hero to a lanky Jim Gordon. He looks fragile, but I mean still, it's kinda dope that Gordon becomes Batman. In at 9, Flashpoint. Thomas Wayne's Batman from the Flashpoint timeline is a fascinating and tragic character, and honestly, one of my favorite versions of Batman. In this alternate universe, it was Bruce Wayne who was killed in the alleyway, causing his father, Thomas, to become Batman instead. Unlike his son's more traditional superhero version, Thomas Wayne's Batman operates more like a vigilante, using brutal and even lethal tactics to take down his enemies. He's a hardened and embittered figure who has given up hope for justice in a world riddled with corruption and violence. And I mean, given his origin, I kinda get it. I understand why. Despite his brutal methods though, Thomas is driven by a deep sense of love and protection for his wife Martha, who has gone insane and actually become the Joker in this reality after the loss of their son. He'll stop at nothing to try and save her, even if it means crossing moral boundaries. Thomas Wayne's Batman is a dark and tragic twist on the traditional Batman mythology, and he reminds us that the choices we make, even the ones made with the best intentions, can have unforeseen and devastating consequences. But also he killed Reverse Flash, which is pretty dope. In at 8, Red Rain. Batman investigates a series of gruesome murders in Gotham City, only to discover that the killer is none other than Dracula, the legendary vampire. Batman teams up with a rogue vampire named Tanya to stop Dracula and his brood from terrorizing the city, but in the course of it, Batman actually makes Tanya turn him. Yeah, he becomes a vampire to fight the vampires. Tanya then provides Batman with a blood substitute to spare him from the cycle of death and murder that comes with being bitten by a vampire, but in order to destroy Dracula's minions, Batman lures them into the Batcave, where Tanya and her followers engage them in combat. Batman detonates multiple explosives, destroying Wayne Manor and exposing the cave to sunlight, which ultimately kills all the vampires inside it. Batman then confronts Dracula himself and impales the vampire lord on a tree that had been struck by lightning. This act, however, comes at the cost of Batman's humanity, as Dracula drained the last of his blood. Nevertheless, Batman assured Alfred that he has nothing to fear, as the Batman, with his new, literally vampiric powers, will live on forever. The most Batman version on this list, if I'm honest. In at 7, Gotham by Gaslight. Gotham by Gaslight is about 19th century Bruce Wayne recalling the killing of his parents as a child. Consulting with Dr. Sigmund Freud, yes that one, about the dreams he has had about the deaths of his parents and significantly bats, he then returns to Gotham City to become Batman and fight crime. The Gotham press begins to circulate the news of the Batman and soon links his appearance to a series of women found killed throughout the city. The identity of the killer is announced by Commissioner Tolliver to be Jack the Ripper. Eventually, Bruce is accused of the murders and sentenced to be and is imprisoned at Arkham Asylum. But with the help of Alfred, he escapes, dons the Batsuit, and stops Jack the Ripper, who is revealed to be Jacob Packer. Jacob then also confesses to causing the deaths of Thomas and Martha and framing Bruce in revenge for Martha's rejection. The comic was a one-shot from January of 1990, but became a fan favorite and is quite the interesting and dark tale, because Batman fighting Jack the Ripper, that's kinda dope. In at 6, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is a combination of obviously Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' killing at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and was ambushed and murdered by poachers a short time after his arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan then went to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, the Canadian Super Soldier program, and it was here where Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his metamutant nature. The Weapon X project was terminated due to its dual failure. Logan was ineffective as a weapon because he possessed a conscience, but this didn't stop him from being pretty damn badass. Having all the powers of Logan, as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, I'm not even kidding, those are actually things, this is essentially a superpowered Batman, and I think that that's something we all wanted. Plus, Dark Claw, that's a great freaking name, dude. That's dope. That's terrifying. Halfway through, in at number 5, Red Sun. Imagine, if you will, Batman being a force for Mother Russia. The Batman of this story was born to a pair of dissidents who were later killed by Stalin's police force. He vowed to seek vengeance against Fyodor Roslov, the captain of the police force. After 20 years, he became the most wanted man in the Soviet Union and continuously challenged the authorities, executing acts of terror against Superman's regime and evading Roslov's police force skillfully. I couldn't help it. Just that name kind of makes you have to go into that accent. The people revered him as a legend, impossible to kill, and the ghost of killed dissidents. Roslov convinced Batman to team up with him and eliminate Superman, arguing that with Superman out of the way, Batman's vendetta against Roslov would be easier. Batman agreed and kidnapped Wonder Woman, using her lasso to draw Superman into a wasteland where he bombarded him with simulated red sunlight, and Batman intended to lock Superman away in a cellar, but Wonder Woman destroyed her lasso and the generator powering the lamps, which freed Superman. Batman then offed himself by detonating a bomb that was inside of his body to avoid being lobotomized and locked up, because of course that's gonna happen. In 4, Batman the Merciless. When Ares, the Greek god of war, created a helmet that amplified his powers 100-fold, war broke out in an effort to stop him. For 2 years, Batman and Wonder Woman fought side by side to get close enough to attempt to stop the god. It was during this war that Bruce and Diana fell in love with each other. They and their allies made a pledge to kill the god of war in order to end his reign of terror once and for all, and as they finally mounted an attack to kill Ares, the two were able to get the helmet off the god of war. However, Diana was incapacitated, causing Batman to believe that she had died. Driven by grief, Bruce put on the helmet of the god of war to defeat Ares, despite being warned of its corrupting influence by Diana earlier on. Believing he could wield it mercifully while making war fair and just, he succeeded in killing Ares but was turned into a merciless warrior himself, who started to see his old code as worthless. Despite learning that Diana had actually survived and was only stunned by Ares, Bruce was too addicted to the power of the helmet to let it go. He in fact chose to kill the woman he loved rather than risk losing the helmet. And then with virtually unlimited power and no sense of morality, Bruce went on to wage war on the entire world. Because, you know, gotta love angry Batman. This is basically just Injustice, Superman, but Batman. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Red Death. Red Death is a villainous amalgamation of Batman and the Flash. Possessing super speed and a bloodlust like no other, his origin on Earth -52 is a dark one. Batman started off fighting crime with Robin, obviously, but Robins kept dying. Robin after Robin, none would survive. So Batman grew increasingly extreme within his methods and basically lost all sense of morality. This led him to then seek out Barry, the Flash, for his Speed Force powers. However, when Barry refused to comply, Batman used weapons from his various enemies to incapacitate Barry. Batman then rigged up a cosmic treadmill to his Batmobile somehow. I don't know how a treadmill is gonna help power a car, but then he attached Barry to the hood and drove them both into the Speed Force, causing a fusion of the two. The resulting entity was an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for death, while Barry's consciousness was trapped inside of Bruce's body. Oh boy. Red Death was later approached by the Batman Who Laughs and convinced to join Barbados's Dark Knights, whose aim was to conquer the multiverse, because of course it is. The logistics of how this came to be are unclear, but it's still freaking terrifying. I don't know how a treadmill makes the Batmobile able to get into the Speed Force, but you know what? 88 miles an hour, Marty. Let's go. Penultimately, in at number 2, Batman Beyond. Amanda Waller, director of Project Cadmus, needed a new Batman to continue to fight for justice, and saw genetic engineering as the solution. She created Project Batman Beyond by using Bruce Wayne's DNA to rewrite a male human's reproductive material, and found a couple in Gotham City with a psychological profile nearly identical to that of Bruce's parents, the McGinnises. Warren McGinnis was secretly injected with a nanotech solution that rewrote his DNA to basically be Bruce's, and then a year later, Terry was born with half of his mother's genetic material and half of Bruce's. To complete Terry's origins to become a crime fighter, Amanda planned to have the same trauma that inspired Bruce to become Batman happen to Terry's parents. Yes, this woman plotted to have a kid's parents assassinated right in front of him. After a night at the theater watching The Grey Ghost Strikes, Amanda had the Phantasm go over to kill Terry's parents. However, Phantasm refused to go along with the plan and allowed the McGinnises to continue on, unaware of what might have happened that night. Terry still became the new Batman, fighting for justice in a futuristic Gotham City, but still, come on, Amanda. I mean, like, I know you're Amanda Waller, but like, still, come on, okay? But also, Batman Beyond is like iconic and everyone loves it. And finally, in at number 1, The Batman Who Laughs. The story of Batman of Earth -22 was not much different from that of any other version of the Caped Crusader. When he was a boy, Bruce watched his parents get killed in an alleyway, vowing vengeance against crime. He trained for years and years to become a hero and then became Batman, fighting supervillains in Gotham. But everything went sideways for this Batman when the Joker started a killing spree across Gotham. The clown had discovered that he was dying from the same chemicals that had actually turned him into what he was and wanted to take everyone with him. He killed all of Batman's enemies, including Penguin, Catwoman, Killer Croc, and the Ventriloquist, and the Joker also killed Commissioner Gordon, who accidentally sprung an acid trap on his notebook and melted his face off. After bombing a hospital and recreating the scene from Bruce's parents' death right in front of him multiple times, this Batman lost control and broke Joker's neck. Unbeknownst to Batman though, the Joker exhaled a toxin that contaminated Bruce's heart, which infected anyone close to him if he had died. In this case, it was Batman, so this caused him to snap and basically become the new Joker before taking over Earth -22 and later on gaining cosmic power. So yeah, I'm gonna put that at number 1. That's terrifying but also dope.
Number 10. Deceased. After the Justice League defeated Darkseid, he somehow managed to discreetly abduct Cyborg and take him to his homeworld of Apocalypse. There, it was revealed that a half of the anti-life equation was contained inside Cyborg. Darkseid sought to merge the half of the equation inside Cyborg with the half he already possessed, but Desaad warned that combining the two halves inside Cyborg would likely kill him. But Darkseid don't care, so he tried to do it anyways, which resulted in a corrupted anti-life equation that became a techno-organic virus and infected Darkseid. Darkseid, upset, shot this infected Cyborg back to Earth, where he automatically connected to the World Wide Web, instantly infecting every single person who was using it with the virus, and chaos immediately erupted. While he kind of unintentionally put a zombie-like plague on the world, he did try to save it in the end. Keyword try. Number 9. Aquaborg. In Superman Batman issues 60 and 61, we're introduced to the Justice Titans, and in case it wasn't obvious, this is indeed a mashed together version of both the Justice League and the Teen Titans, which in my mind makes things kind of complicated since Cyborg is a main part of both after Flashpoint. Aquaborg himself seems to be a mix of Aquaman and Cyborg, as his name is Arthur Stone. We don't really see him do anything specifically worth mentioning other than fighting Batman and an amalgamated Doomsday and Deathstroke called Doomstroke. Number 8. Earth 3839. In this alternate universe appearing in Superman and Batman Generations 2, number 4, Cyborg, well, he's a bit of a chump. During a confrontation with Metallo, this Earth's Alexander Luthor, Cyborg gets completely immobilized by an EMP and had to be carried to safety by the other heroes, who included Jay West the Flash, Clark Wayne, a superpowered Nightwing, Janet Hall as Black Hawk, and Hal Jordan Green Lantern. Unfortunately, there isn't really much more to say about this one. He was kind of poo, but at least the story was cool. Number 7. DCEU Cyborg. Played excellently by Ray Fisher, the movie version of Cyborg seen in Justice League initially refused to join the team, though after his father was captured, he voluntarily pitches in and he successfully saves his father from the hands of Steppenwolf. When Superman returned, his offensive system kicked in and he attacked Superman, which triggered the Man of Steel to fight the Justice League, which was a really cool moment. Cyborg also played a super important role in the final act, where he began to separate the mother boxes that had formed the Unity. And of course, with the help of Superman, he succeeded, since no one in this universe can do anything without Henry Cavill, apparently. Thankfully, Cyborg has a substantially larger role in Zack Snyder's massive Justice League director's cut, which delves deeper into his backstory and his strained relationship with his father. I kind of hope we get to see Ray Fisher reprise the role at some point. Number 6. Flashpoint Cyborg. When Barry Allen Flash goes back in time to try and save his mom, he royally messes up the timeline, pretty much changing the whole DC universe. In this newly created timeline called Flashpoint, Cyborg is America's greatest hero in place of Superman, based out of Detroit. When the Amazons and the Atlanteans aliens go to war with each other, Cyborg tries to gather a group of Earth's superhumans to help stop the conflict that has already ravaged half of Europe. But thanks to Thomas Wayne, this timeline's Batman, refusing to join up, nobody else wanted to join his group either. But then superstar Barry Allen shows up and convinces Wayne otherwise, and the three set off to gather together an army and save the day. Number 5. Robot Man. This version of our favorite cybernetic hero comes from the Kingdom Come universe. In this storyline, Victor Stone actually becomes fully integrated with his robotics, losing his physical humanity in the process. But thanks to this being the future, technology is a little bit more advanced and he becomes made up of a liquid metal, all Terminator T-1000 style. Since he can shape his form in any way he wants, he chooses to look as human as possible, at least in shape. He's still all super shiny liquid metal, so it doesn't really work out fully, but... Victor then joined the Superman's Justice League to combat the rogue metahumans, taking the name Robot Man. Unfortunately though, he met his end in the Gulag with a large group of other heroes. Number 4. Cyborg 2.0. Okay, so this one involves time travel, which I hate, but alas, here we are. So basically, the Teen Titans end up traveling to the 31st century to help out the Legion of Superheroes, and on their way back, they end up 10 years in their future, and they encounter an alternate timeline version of themselves who have become a fascist crime-fighting force. The Titans came back and vowed to never become that future, so they split up to avoid it. Only, that is the exact thing that caused this future to occur in the first place. Victor was one of the first to turn to the dark side, and he created the Titans East, and also caused the Phantom Limbs to appear. He also had this really cool slimmed down look. It was kind of awesome, but he was evil, so you can't really take a side. Sorry. Number 3. Injustice Cyborg. In this timeline, just like most of the other heroes, Cyborg had a very similar life to his main Earth counterpart. That is, up until Superman went bonkers. Once Superman established his regime, Cyborg kind of became Superman's Boy Scout. He was very dedicated to Superman, which is not what I would have expected, honestly. He was Superman's guy in the chair and helped him out quite a bit. Honestly, Cyborg was kind of really lame in this story. He gets defeated and incapacitated a lot. The best one though was when Batman revealed there had been a virus that he implanted in Cyborg when they first met, and just had it in his back pocket for whenever he would need it. Number 2. Murder Machine. Yes, there is a Batman Cyborg hybrid who is part of the Batman Who Laughs Dark Knights, and yes, he is terrifyingly awesome. Murder Machine first appears in Dark Days the Casting in the Dark Multiverse Earth -44. On this world, this evil Batman Cyborg comes about after the passing of Alfred Pennyworth in the Batcave by a group of Batman's villains. As Bruce Wayne's father figure and closest friend, Bruce took this loss hard and he blamed himself. He asked Cyborg to make an Alfred Cyborg AI called Alfred Protocol in order to help Bruce like Alfred used to do when he was alive. Unfortunately, like most AI in fiction, it went mad with its directive of protecting Batman. It spread like a virus, took down all the villains, then all the heroes, and even took over Batman's body since it didn't believe that Batman could protect himself well enough. And Batman just didn't want to be separated from Alfred, so he was kinda cool with it too. And in at number 1 is Grid. As with a lot of these alternate Justice League variants, we gotta turn to Earth 3 for at least one. After the cyborg of Earth 3 gained his abilities, he realized that he could monitor all superhuman beings, but he didn't want to invade their privacy directly. So instead, he let secondary subsystems within his software do the privacy invading itself. He called this the Grid. Unfortunately though, this grid managed to grow and learn from hackers and viruses throughout the world, so that it grew into a neural network that then developed into full consciousness with some help from Atomica, who used it against the Justice League and brought it with her to the Crime Syndicate of America. Grid now used Cyborg's parts and body to give itself its own body. Essentially, it took over the body of Cyborg, gaining all of his powers but with none of his humanity. It's very, very, very scary. Number 10. Mazaz. On Earth 3, things are kind of backwards. Power and strength reign supreme, and those who are superheroes and villains in the Prime Universe are supervillains and heroes respectively in Earth 3. Alexander Luthor, for example, was the most powerful superhero on Earth, going by the name Mazaz, which is Shazam backwards. Now, he's technically a good guy, but his power is what I find truly terrifying. Mazaz has the ability to absorb the powers of any superpowered being that he took the life of through his lightning. Using this, he gained all the powers of Bizarro, including invulnerability, self-sustenance, Arctic vision, flame breath, and kryptonite immunity. He got the powers of the Firestorm Matrix from Deathstorm, which are too many to list, the Speed Force abilities from Johnny Quick, and the powers of Hawkwing. While the characters he fought were arguably worse than him, no one from Earth 3 is really good, and he is absolutely terrifying, when he is powered up of course. Number 9. Bump in the Night. For starters, DC's House of Horror is basically a collection of short stories featuring different characters. They are all equally interesting and horror themed. The Possession of Billy Batson and Last Laugh stories are particularly interesting, but for today's video, I think I want to talk about the very first one. Bump in the Night. This short story follows Martha Kent on the night Kal-El arrives on Earth. Jonathan Kent has gone out to explore what exactly caused a big bang and a trail of smoke on the Kent's farm, but he isn't coming back. As Martha worries about where her husband has gone to, she goes back inside the house, but Martha starts hearing bumping and thumping coming from upstairs in the house. Suddenly, a demonic humanoid child crashes through the ceiling and begins attacking her. She tries to run to the barn, but fiery beams of energy fire from the creature, blowing up the barn. She takes refuge in her truck only for the creature to land on the hood, shrieking. It throws the truck across the yard and Martha gets out wounded only for the truck to explode. The creature flies away with the symbol of an S emblazoned on his chest. If you are looking for comic book content, this is the place to find it, so hit us with a subscribe to stay inundated with tons of videos about all your favorite heroes. Thank you. Number 8. Speed Demon from the Amalgam Universe. The Amalgam Universe, where the worlds of Marvel and DC collide, is honestly an amazing place. We get all kinds of crazy mashups like Wolverine and Batman, but while that is incredibly awesome, the one I think may be better for this list would be Blaze Allen, the Speed Demon, or basically the Flash mashed together with Ghost Rider. Yes, it's as crazy as it sounds, and honestly, it's more totally awesome than it is scary, but Ghost Rider is already fast with his motorcycle, so imagine if he didn't even need that. The best part of this is that his cousin, Wally West, becomes another version of Speed Demon, and the two of them work together. It's not something that I thought I needed, but I absolutely did need it. Number 7. Witch-marked Wonder Woman. Years ago, a 12-year-old Diana Prince came upon a ritual being performed at a crossroads in Themyscira to the goddess of magic and witches, Hecate, by her followers. Diana gets grabbed by the followers and Hecate brands her with a witch mark, and she vowed to Hippolyta that one day she would return to use her witch mark to take over the world. Once things start popping off in the 2018 Witching Hour crossover, Earth's magic is beginning to disappear and Hecate is obviously to blame. Hecate activates her witch mark, 5 women who have been branded, including Diana. The witch marked power Diana possesses could rip the world apart and tear holes in reality. It's honestly very insane, and it only gets crazier as she gains the power of the other witch marked. Now I glossed over quite a bit for the sake of time, so I suggest you read the story. Number 6. Captain Thunder. This is kind of confusing because there are so many versions of Shazam who use Captain Thunder as their name. Basically, Captain Thunder that I'm talking about was William Fawcett, a kid who was given powers similar to Captain Marvel. He received his powers when the shaman Maroki gifted William a belt with a thunderbolt symbol that, when rubbed in combo with the magical word thunder, turns him into Captain Thunder. Unfortunately, after fighting the Monster League of Evil, they gave him an evil persona instead of a heroic one. So, when Captain Thunder first appeared in Superman 276 in 1974, he was helping robbers instead of fighting them. It's only after Superman urges Thunder to use his wisdom to fix what happened and to make it back to his own Earth. There was a much cooler version of Captain Thunder in the Flashpoint timeline with a sweet battle tiger, who is who you'd probably think of when I say Captain Thunder, but I don't want to talk about him. So, nah. Number 5. Kingdom Come Shazam. In an alternate possible future, metahumans or superheroes are now hated. Because of this, Billy Batson hasn't become Shazam in years and is now full grown, looking a lot like his alter ego, minus the cool costume and cape and powers and stuff. He was eventually brainwashed by Lex Luthor into believing that metahumans and even the Captain Marvel inside of him are all monsters. In time, Bruce Wayne tries to convince Billy otherwise, which eventually forces him to turn into Shazam once more, breaking open the metahuman prison and starting a massive war that puts the world at risk. After a nuclear device was dropped threatening to kill thousands, Superman convinced Billy to help, and Shazam outraced Superman to the bomb, using his lightning to destroy it, sacrificing himself to save both humans and metahumans, ending the hatred against superheroes once and for all. Good job. Number 4. Earth 5 Shazam. Earth 5, or Earth S if you prefer, is a simpler, kinder world. A world that is more optimistic. A world where the heroes are seen as such with hardly any faults. Basically, this is the golden age of comics, specifically Fawcett Comics, where Captain Marvel is the main superhero, which gives the world the name Thunderworld. He and his family, Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, keep the world safe from everything from the Monster Society to aliens. I'm talking like Shazam is essentially taking the place of Superman as the premier superhero of the Earth. This version of Shazam worked together alongside Superman and Overman of other universes to recruit the Supermen of the universe. They all worked together, led by Captain Marvel, to defeat Ultraman and weaken Mandrake, who was killed by the Green Lanterns. Yeah. Number 3. Shazam Who Laughs. After the Batman Who Laughs infects Shazam / Billy Batson with a dark metal virus, turning him into a Joker-like version of himself, he is tasked with infecting Superman with the same Joker dark metal virus. Shazam goes to the Batcave and waits for Superman to show up so he can attack, and Joker Shazam is easily a match for Superman and Batman one-on-one. But with the two teaming up, he's a little overwhelmed and retreats, which is odd because going by King Shazam, he takes on the Titan Atlas trying to test his new abilities and even defeats multiple gods. When he is in a fight with Ares, he even defeats and infects Lady Shazam, so it doesn't really check that Batman and Superman give him that much trouble, but whatever, that's how comics go because Batman and Superman are Batman and Superman. Luckily, he is cured thanks to Lex Luthor cutting off the source of the dark metal, but this guy was nuts and showed no signs of stopping, and that smile? It's creepy. It's just creepy. Don't like it. Number 2. Mazaz. When we first ever meet Mazaz, he is described as the most powerful superhero on Earth 3, the home of the sinister JLA, the Crime Syndicate of America. He was for a long time the biggest threat that the Crime Syndicate of America ever faced, and he has taken the lives of a lot of the CSA's members, using his superpowers. So what are those superpowers? Alexander was just a regular guy, as much as a Luthor can be, until at some point in his life, he figured out how to take the powers of superpowered beings. It seems that the first person who lost their power and their life to Alexander was Will Batson, Earth 3's Billy Batson, which gave Alexander the powers of Mazaz, which is Shazam backwards. Those powers are to call down dark lightning, transforming him into a more masculine being with superhuman strength, durability, flight, electrokinesis, and presumably magic. When he first shows up, he has already stolen the powers of a hero called Hawkwing, who we don't actually know, but he also goes on to take all the Kryptonian-like powers of Bizarro, plus kryptonite immunity, the Firestorm Matrix powers of Deathstorm, Earth 3's Firestorm, the super speed abilities of Johnny Quick, and way more. While the characters he fought were arguably worse than him in terms of their morality, no one from Earth 3 is really good, and he is absolutely terrifying. And finally, in at number 1, it's the God of Gods Shazam. The God of Gods was a side story from Darkseid War centered on the hero Shazam, and sees him gain 6 new gods in place of the original. After the Anti-Monitor killed Darkseid by fusing the Black Racer with the Anti-Life, Darkseid's death caused Shazam's connection to the Olympian gods to disconnect. Shazam's old gods were replaced by new gods, and the new gods included Anapel, the goddess of rebirth, Siva, the god of destruction and strength, Ate, the goddess of impulse, Hronmir, the Martian god of death, Memorigan the wizard, and Zanzu / Yuga Khan, the father of Darkseid. Shazam gaining these new gods' powers makes him incredibly powerful. Yuga Khan said that Shazam can put a hole hole in the source wall by being empowered by the other 5 gods with the lightning rod, which is incredibly powerful if you don't know. So, long story short, the God of Gods was an incredibly amped up version of Billy Batson's Shazam. And that's all we've got. I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd, and I hope you enjoyed watching. I'll catch you all on the flippy flop, but for now, peace out, nerds! We're moving on to number 10 with Talon from Earth 3. Now, unless you guys don't know, Earth 3 is the home to an evil Justice League known as the Crime Syndicate of America. On this world, Batman is actually Owlman, and he is also Thomas Wayne Jr., not Bruce Wayne. Now, he takes on Dick Grayson just like his regular Earth counterpart, only this Richard Grayson takes on the much more sinister name of Talon. But Talon began a relationship with Duella Dent, who happened to be the daughter of the heroic Jokester on Earth 3. Yes, that is a good guy version of the Joker. He and Duella came to New Earth and joined the Teen Titans during the year after the Infinite Crisis, and together they actually stood against Black Adam during World War III. Number 9, the third Batman on New 52 Earth 2. The Earth 2 introduced in the New 52 is different from the original Earth 2 where the Golden Age characters reside. Instead, this Earth 2 sees Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman pass away in the first invasion of Earth by Steppenwolf and the forces of Apocalypse, who took over the world. Dick in this reality was married to Barbara Gordon, and they even shared a child together before she also passed away. Dick Grayson ended up training with Ted Grant and became this future's third Batman after Thomas Wayne took the mantle alongside his son, who acted as his Robin. He was a much more aggressive and darker version of Dick Grayson, which really worked well when he became the Dark Knight. Hey y'all! If you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to whack that like button. It's all you gotta do to let us know we are doing a good job. Thanks so much, nerds. On to number 8, Injustice. Dick Grayson in the Injustice universe was a superhero and sidekick to Batman, just like the original. But Grayson still acted as Batman's original Robin, still led the Titans, and still struck out on his own as Nightwing. He was succeeded by Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and eventually Damian Wayne as Robin, but he formed a bond with Damian, and he is even seen as Damian's mentor. However, after Damian sides with Superman in Injustice, he accidentally causes the death of Nightwing when he throws his weapon at his head, causing Nightwing to stumble, fall, and land on a rock that breaks his neck. It's honestly quite the shocking turn of events. Now eventually Dick became the successor to Boston Brand as the second Deadman, giving him the ability to fight again from beyond the grave with the powers of flight, intangibility, invisibility, and possession. Number 7, Red Robin from Kingdom Come. In the Kingdom Come story, Superman and the other Justice League members are forced out of retirement to combat a new, dangerous generation of heroes. This future version of Richard Grayson actually became the first ever Red Robin in his middle age, but not as a sidekick to Batman. Instead, he was part of Superman's Justice League. He played a similar role to Batman as part of this league, being like a stealthy hand-to-hand combatant. This version of Grayson also has a daughter with Starfire from the Teen Titans named Mari Grayson, who goes by the hero name Nightstar. Kingdom Come is considered one of the best graphic novels of all time, and I'm glad Richard is a part of it, especially since it brought us the awesome Red Robin costume. Number 6, Cute Batman. I'm sorry I call them Cute Batman, but honestly, look at him, he's kind of adorable. On Earth 42, all the superheroes appear to be these little kid-like versions of their normal counterparts. Here, Dick Grayson has gone on to take up the Batman mantle after this world's Bruce Wayne was killed by a villain from an alternate reality called Super Doom. Now, Dick acquired the Multiversity Guidebook, which detailed DC's current 52 universes, and using it, he teamed up with various Batman and helped to bring the heroes of the multiverse together. All the little heroes of this world eventually discovered they were actually androids under the control of the Empty Hand in order to spy on the House of Heroes. Still adorable though. Just saying. Number 5, Robin on regular Earth 2. Now, this Earth 2 is the one where all the Golden Age heroes of DC Comics are situated. In the Golden Age timeline, his history is the same as the original because technically, he is the original. Right? Where things change is what would have been when he reached adulthood. In the diverging timeline of Earth 2, Dick Grayson actually remains the only Robin for his whole career. He grows up keeping the title and actually goes to school to become a lawyer. He takes up the Batman mantle once and comes into conflict with the Joker, but that makes him retire from the Batman name, and he continues on performing as the senior partner of the new dynamic duo, which consisted of himself as Robin and Bruce Wayne's daughter Helena as Huntress. And the two took part part in the Battle of the Crisis on Infinite Earths, where they unfortunately passed away. Number 4. Nightwing from the New Order. In the year 2028, all-out war between heroes and villains had broke out in the streets of Metropolis. There was countless deaths and destruction caused by the conflict for days, but after Batman passed away in the conflict, Nightwing activated a device in the war-torn streets of Metropolis that shut off or dampened the superpowers of most of the world, believing it was the best cause of action to save humanity from the dangers of superpowered population. Now after this, Dick began a relationship with Starfire from the Teen Titans, and together they had a son named Jake. As time went on, Starfire progressively fell out of love with Dick and resented his cause. One day, after Dick had chosen to lead the new Crusaders division to hunt metahumans, Starfire left Dick without saying a word, forcing him to raise their son alone in Wayne Manor. It turns out Jake is actually a metahuman with superpowers, and Nightwing now has to go against everything he previously stood for to save his son from the world that he actually created. Number 3. Superman. Some of you may not know, but the original Nightwing was actually a hero of Krypton. It's where the name originated, and Superman telling this story to a young Dick Grayson is what inspired him to take on the name Nightwing. But did you know Superman himself took the name? And even before Dick Grayson did it. Yes, Superman Kal-El has been Nightwing twice, in fact. In pre-Crisis, he was the first ever to be called Nightwing in 1963. Now, at this time, he actually had no powers, and he took on the name, while Jimmy Olsen took on the counterpart to this, the first Flamebird. The second time, Superman donned the Nightwing identity on a reformed Krypton in the post-Crisis world, alongside Lois Lane as Flamebird. These two heroes were both Kryptonian legends, and Superman wasn't the only Krypton native to take on the role over the years either. Number 2. Joker. On Earth 31, this version of Dick Grayson never actually became Nightwing. In fact, working under the much more strict, mean, and militaristic Bruce Wayne, Dick was even fired from being Robin for incompetence, presumably caused by not getting past the death of his parents. Years later, and this version of Grayson goes a little insane. He goes through an experimental procedure that makes him essentially immortal through cellular regeneration powers, with the side effect of him being driven absolutely bonkers. With his abilities, he couldn't be killed by almost anything. He was attacked with acid, thermite, and C4, and even had his head taken off with no success. He became the second Joker after the original one and took out several retired superheroes, including the Creeper and the Guardian. After attempting to do the same to Catgirl, Batman finally took him down by throwing him into lava and extinguishing all of his cells simultaneously at once. May not be the most beloved Frank Miller story, but it's certainly an interesting version of Joker. And in at number 1, finally, is Dr. Fate from Flashpoint. In Flashpoint, Dick Grayson was 1/3 of the family acrobatics team called the Flying Graysons that toured with Halley's Circus. While touring in Poland, the circus was actually attacked by Amazon soldiers looking to steal Kent Nelson's helmet of fate, the most powerful magical artifact in the world, according to Black Alice. In their escape, Nelson was killed, but Grayson and a few survivors managed to keep the helmet in their possession. The rest of Halley's survivors were killed by the Amazons, leaving only Dick Grayson and the helmet on the run with the ghost of Deadman to protect him. He eventually decided to use the helmet of fate against the Amazons by becoming Dr. Fate, which granted him godlike arcane power, increasing his sorcery. It also grants him elemental control, including pyrokinesis, hydrokinesis, geokinesis, aerokinesis, cosmic awareness, and even precognition.
At number 10, we have Johnny Quick of Earth 3. In this dimension, the Justice League exists as a legion of criminals called the Crime Syndicate, made up of evil versions of the heroes we're used to seeing in the Justice League. Flash's evil counterpart, Johnny Quick, has powers similar to Barry Allen and is credited with defeating the first iteration of the Doom Patrol alongside his girlfriend and partner in crime, Atomica. He also traps the Justice League of Prime Earth in the Firestorm Matrix, which is a pretty impressive demonstration of power on its own. And it may suggest that he is more in tune with his abilities than Prime Earth's Flash, giving him a spot on this list without question. However, he is soon defeated by Captain Cold, who freezes one of his legs and shatters it before breaking his neck. and simply because Johnny Quick loses as badly and as quickly as he wins, he's held back a bit on this list. At number 9 we have Avery Ho from Prime Earth. Avery gains her powers in the Flash Volume 5 when the Speed Force goes out of whack and endows masses of regular people with super speed. Avery is a relatively new hero who has only been around since 2016, but we can be pretty confident that she'll only continue to grow in power and ability as time goes on. Partly through experience with the Speed Force and working alongside Wally West, but mainly because of a distinct ability she has that's unique to this variant in particular, in that she can siphon speed from other people, allowing her to increase her speed on command. So it's not hard to see how even if she's not at her height of power yet, she might soon reach a power level that might surpass even the most powerful variants on this list. At number 8 is Danica Williams from Earth 12. Also known as Beyond Flash, this version of the Flash exists in the 2040s alongside Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond. Danica is known to be one of the most powerful versions of the Flash, having the ability to communicate with past iterations of the Flash like Jay Garrick and Wally West. This helps her develop as a hero and gain enough foresight that she can avoid making some of the tougher mistakes that she would have made had she been all on her own. It also proves to be the case that variants from the future usually have some kind of advantage to their present day counterparts due to experience and futuristic technology. Personally, I just think there's something special about Earth 12 because Batman Beyond is also a really powerful Batman variant and he comes from Earth 12 as well. And Danica Williams rubs shoulders with him quite often, matching his power and intellect most of the time. At number 7 we have Bart Allen, aka Kid Flash, FKA Impulse. Hailing from New Earth, this teenage speedster is credited with being able to go faster than the speed of light, and those who understand the laws of physics would know how much of a game changer this is for Bart. It effectively gives him the power to transcend the laws of relativity. His abilities are so impressive, partly due to the fact that Bart originally exists in the 30th century before coming back to the present, and being as young as he is, he hasn't yet shown the full potential of his impressive speed. But once he matures into adulthood, we may end up witnessing the most powerful speedster that the world has ever seen. The only thing that sets him back on this list was his struggle with an illness that caused him to age pretty rapidly. He is able to get it under control, but he ages about 10 years in the time it'd take anyone else to age 2. So we hope this doesn't hinder him any further because he's one of the most powerful Flashes out there and has tons of potential. At number 6 we have Reverse Flash. First appearing in the Flash 139 as far back as 1963, Eobard Thawne is an evil opposite to the Flash that gets his powers from the negative Speed Force. But don't let the name confuse you, the negative Speed Force doesn't negate anything. This inverted variant of the Flash can reach insane speeds and can even move through objects and walls, cause whirlwinds using his body, and most impressively of all, he can travel between dimensions at will. Not only this, but he has electrokinesis, which allows him to charge up electrical energy from his movement and fire blasts of negative Speed Force lightning at his victims. He can even use this power to steal years of life from his targets and age them to death. And if someone gets the better of him, Reverse Flash even has a healing factor that allows him to mend wounds and even regrow limbs. At number 5 is Savitar from the Arrowverse. In the DCEU, Savitar is a futuristic version of Barry Allen who is jaded by a failure that turns his family and friends against him. So what does one do when they're cast out of society? Right, they decide to become a god. But joking aside, he does get his speeds to a point where he easily surpasses the abilities of his prime self and even starts to notice his body ripping apart due to such high speeds. This is why we see him in this insane armor. He designs this armor to keep himself safe at his unimaginable speeds. He then goes back in time and across dimensions to spread awareness of his godlike status before going back to modern day Prime Earth and facing himself as this newly improved yet fully evil variant. At number 4 is Black Flash. Black Flash is a manifestation of death that is fast enough to chase down any speedster and take them out for good. He can move faster than the speed of light and is immortal, putting him very high on the list. It's unclear why Black Flash is always trying to kill speedsters like Barry Allen and Wally West, but it's suggested that these speedsters are so fast that they can outrun time and therefore death. Unless, of course, death were to somehow, send a conduit after them that also uses the Speed Force, which is what the Black Flash essentially is. This variant first appears in the Flash Volume 2, issue 138 in 1998 and has been spotted in moments right before the deaths of Barry Allen and Johnny Quick. He has also chased after Wally West, but Wally was able to defeat this variant by running all the way to the end of time, destroying Black Flash, because when there's no time, death has no meaning. But to think that these are the lengths Wally has to go to get rid of Black Flash just shows how insanely powerful this variant is. At number 3 is Wally West of Earth 22. Featured in the Kingdom Come storyline from the 90s, Wallace West is an amalgamation of all the former holders of the Flash mantle: Wally West, Barry Allen, and Jay Garrick. He's such a powerful version of the Flash that he is in constant motion, only appearing as a hazy blur most of the time. He then becomes an interdimensional being with a hyper-awareness of the relationship between dimensions and his influence on reality. In this way, he is pretty much a god and is known to have achieved more than any Flash from any other dimension. This could be due to his age as well, because Wallace West is an older iteration of the Flash, but it could also be chalked up to his near omniscience and omnipresence as a Flash variant. He isn't quite immortal like the Black Flash, but his mastery of interdimensional knowledge could be considered a more powerful trait than even immortality. In our number 2 spot is the Red Death. The Barry Allen from Earth 52 is a villainous combination of Batman and the Flash, and is known to be the most powerful version of the Flash in the whole multiverse, but I beg to differ, because I'm putting him at number 2. You'll see who goes ahead of him, and we'll see if you agree with me. First appearing in the Dark Knight's Metal comic book event in 2019, the Red Death is basically what you get when you give Batman super speed, super strength, and durability. This means that this variant can use the extreme intellect of Batman and apply it at extreme speeds, crafting bat gadgets faster than the speed of light and tracking down his enemies effortlessly in a split second. The way this villain is formed is that Batman is jaded by his experiences of loss, getting emotionally exhausted by losing so many sidekicks and deciding that he needs to take matters into his own hands. This dark motivation also adds to the Red Death's power as he takes out his anger on the world with extreme speed and extreme power. At number 1 is Zoom. I'm putting Zoom at number 1. Zoom is a double variant of Flash, which is my way of saying that he's a variant of Reverse Flash, who is himself already a variant, so he's a double variant. But this version of Reverse Flash is even more powerful than the original, having an even more refined control over his time travel abilities. In the case of Zoom, he can speed up and slow down time around him without his frame of reference being affected. This means he can avoid the typical complications that other speedsters face, like intense friction and seeing and hearing at these intense speeds. Zoom's grim backstory also empowers his motivations, having lost both his parents at a young age to his father's violence as a notorious serial killer. Zoom goes right up to number 1 on the list because his grasp on his speed abilities is so impressive that he transcends into a new realm of power and becomes an adept time traveler as a result.
Number 10, Earth 99. This Batman hails from the Arrowverse and is found by Kara, aka Supergirl, and Kate Kane, aka Batwoman, in his reality of Earth 99. The Arrowverse, Earth 99 anyways. He began killing off villains at one point after finally having enough, keeping trophies of them after they each had been finally defeated. This put the Bruce Wayne of this world at odds with Superman. The two fought, and while Batman managed to win, he was forced to rely on an exosuit after in order to move and get around. When Kate and Kara attempted to recruit him to face the Anti-Monitor during the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event, he basically refused, telling them that the multiverse is basically not worth saving. He attempts to kill Kara after learning she is also a Kryptonian like Clark was, and is accidentally killed by Kate after his exosuit is broken during the scuffle, electrocuting him to death, because I'm pretty sure his exosuit was like right into his spine. I guess it's like an exoskeleton, if you will. Still, even though he died, this Batman successfully killed all of his enemies and managed to take out Supes too, so I feel like he still gets to qualify. Number 9, Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns version of Batman, as written by Frank Miller, is pretty frightening and is also a little bit older. But just cause he's an older Batman forced to come out of retirement doesn't mean he can't hold his own against the likes of even someone as souped up when it comes to superpowers as Superman. While this Batman might not have any superpowers of his own to tackle his old pal Clark Kent, he proves that he doesn't really need them at all, and that one of the best and most capable versions of Batman out there can still even face godlike beings like Kal-El with just his wits, his determination, and his gadgets and equipment. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, head on over to Facebook to support us over there too, because the support over there helps to support us here and it helps us to just do all the things. Confetti. Number 8. The Bruce. The Bruce is a character that hails from the Elseworlds story Batman I Joker. Well, okay, it isn't like an Elseworlds comic, but it exists outside the continuity of any other main DC universes, so I'm just gonna refer to it as an Elseworlds. The Bruce is actually just a man who has had his appearance altered to resemble Batman. He rules over Gotham, and later his power is transferred to a citizen who is made to resemble the Joker and face the Bruce in a ritualistic annual event known as The Hunt. The Bruce is just a man in this universe and is defeated and replaced, but the power comes from the symbol that he represents. In this dystopian future, the people of Gotham worship whoever holds the title of the Bruce, like a god. There is even a church of Batman dedicated to his glory and his worship. While this isn't necessarily one of the hardest hitting alternatives out there, symbols are very powerful and can't be defeated as easily as a person, as we see in I Joker. Even when the person who represents the Bruce is defeated, he is simply replaced by the civilian that defeated him, who goes from playing the role of the Joker to being declared Gotham's new The Bruce, and worshipped as such. Number 7. Batman and Rookie. Well, usually when we talk about Batman variants, we are talking about other realities and other world stories. In this case, we're actually looking to the main continuity of Prime Earth in modern comics, instead of away from it. This variant of Batman, instead of hailing from another Earth, is simply a whole other person from the main continuity. We are talking about when Jim Gordon, police commissioner, took up the mantle of Batman. Yeah, that happened. Jim became Batman after Bruce's seeming death following the events of Endgame. A corporation known as Powers International came to Gordon and basically approached him about becoming the new Batman. Initially, he wasn't so sure, but eventually he decided to agree and give it a try. He was given surgical muscle implants and a very tight bat suit that made him look real svelte, and a robotic set of armor which could also operate independent of him, known as Rookie.
Number 6. Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman. But when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In this fear-induced state, Superman hallucinates that his wife is the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks her, flying Lois and what would have been John Kent into space, taking both their lives and also inadvertently causing a nuclear detonation to destroy his city, Metropolis. After losing his city, his wife, and his baby, Superman goes into a pretty understandable rage, bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker, and he just plunges his super fist straight through that clown's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the entire Earth and rules it as a tyrant. He turns on and destroys his friends, is manipulated by Wonder Woman of all people, holds nothing back, and puts the entire Earth under the control of his regime. He is a seriously hardcore version of Superman who has actually been revisited recently in John Kent's comic book story, where he even took the life of Earth 3's Ultraman very easily. It was kinda nuts. Now you may be wondering, how is this guy better than the original? He's not really. It's not the character himself that's better, it's more like the entire story as a whole is just really interesting and compelling, making it awesome to learn more and more about this evil version of Superman. Number 5. Vampire Batman. In the Elseworlds Batman and Dracula trilogy, Batman goes up against vampires who have turned Gotham into their home, and then eventually he goes up against Dracula himself. In the first novel, Red Rain, the hero wipes out the vampires and Dracula, although he is transformed into a vampire himself, which means we get to see Batman take on crime using the powers of a vampire in the very next novel, Bloodstorm. He does his bestest to resist the darker aspects of being a vampire, but that all goes kaput when Batman lashes out and drains the Joker after the Joker de-lifed Catwoman. Now, Batman has Alfred and Gordon stake him, putting Batman into a catatonic state. A state that he was then revived from in the third book, Crimson Mist, when criminals took over Gotham in his absence. But he is almost completely animalistic now thanks to the isolation. A bloodthirsty vampire Batman quickly wipes out most of his enemies in a very brutal form, draining them in the process until he is finally put to rest by Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, who all go with him to the grave. Number 4. Strange Visitor Superman. Another Superman, I know, but okay, before we start, technically, this Superman is not canon, but he is truly one of the more powerful versions of the character ever. In the story, Superman outlives everything in the universe, living for literally billions and billions and billions of years. He lives so long and gets so powerful that he gains new abilities like being able to split into thousands of copies that allow the hero to do what he does best throughout the universe at the same time. He outlives all the gods, cosmic entities, mortals, angels, demons, and everything. He watches countless civilizations rise and fall and learns an insane amount of skills like telepathy, which I didn't even know was a skill. He absorbs ridiculous amounts of energy, learns magic and strange sciences through all his copies, and then he reabsorbs them at the end of everything. He can fly faster than the entropic waves of the end of the universe and can manipulate the fabric of reality through sheer strength. Number 3. Nightwing: The New Order. In the year 2028, all-out war between heroes and villains had broke out in the streets of Metropolis. There was countless lost lives and destruction caused by the conflict for days, but after Batman passed away in the conflict, Nightwing activated a device in the war-torn streets of Metropolis that shut off or dampened the superpowers of most of the world, believing it was the best cause of action to save humanity from the dangers of the superpowered population. After this, Dick Grayson began a relationship with Starfire, and together they had a son named Jake. Now, as time went on, Starfire progressively fell out of love with Dick and resented his cause. One day, after Dick had been chosen to lead the new Crusaders division to hunt metahumans, Starfire left Dick without saying a word, forcing him to raise their son alone in Wayne Manor. Now, it turns out, Jake, Nightwing's son, is a metahuman with superpowers, and Nightwing now has to go against everything he previously stood for to save his son from the world that he created. Tell me that's not cool. It's cool. Number 2. Aurora of Themyscira. Comics seem to continuously supply us with things that we never thought we needed. In a moment not likely to ever happen again in the near future, the House of DC and the House of Marvel were friends. They could talk, they could play nice, and to prove that, one of the most beloved moments came in the mid-1990s when these two companies joined forces for a crossover. This took place in the amalgamated world of Earth 9602. On this Earth, it was not Diana Prince who became Wonder Woman. Instead, a meta-mutant child by the name of Aurora was rescued and raised as a princess by the Amazons by Queen Hippolyta, alongside Diana Prince. The two fought alongside each other as they grew up, but when the time came to choose who would be Wonder Woman, Aurora's natural ability to control and harness the forces of weather, plus her Amazonian training, allowed her to secure the victory. She went off to become one hell of a hero when she finally left the island to enter man's world. It's an interesting take on the character, and you should definitely check it out. And finally, in at number 1, Batman of Earth 32. Unexpected is probably how I would describe the Batman from Earth 32. Now, the original Batman of this universe was Bruce Wayne, who also became a Green Lantern, and then flew off into space. When he left the Earth to serve in the Green Lantern Corps, it left the role of Batman open, and who would have guessed that of all the characters, Alexander Luthor would be the one to answer the call? First appearing in Lex Luthor Year of the Villain #1 from November 2019, this Batman was partnered up with Super Martian, which is a cross between a Martian, like Martian Manhunter, and a Kryptonian, like Superman. As you can imagine, they were a powerful combo. They took up a base of operations in what looked like the Batcave, but mixed with the Fortress of Solitude, and were assisted by Fred, their awesome robotic butler. Thanks to having the Martian as his partner, Lex Batman was well acquainted with telepathy, and while it caused him some pretty bad headaches, it was also instrumental in helping deal with the Prime Earth Lex Luthor when he inevitably showed up on this world. Coming in at number 10 is William Marvell. Every now and then, I have the pleasure of talking about the Amalgam Universe, the place where Marvel Comics and DC Comics finally played nice and mashed up their characters together to give fans some of the coolest, most unique, and most powerful iterations of their favorite heroes. For the Amalgam Universe version of Shazam, I think the two comic book giants made a really cheeky move when they gave us a combination of each of their Fawcett comic character iterations. William Marvell, a mix of Billy Batson from DC and Marvel of the Kree from Marvel Comics. William here is a young boy that is transformed into a super scientific, energy projecting superhero called Captain Marvel whenever he shouts the word Kree. Now, as silly as it would be to go around shouting Kree, it really just makes sense for this to be the amalgamated version of Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel was a key member of the JLA, or the Judgment League Avengers. Number 9, Mary Marvel. Mary Marvel isn't an alternate Shazam in the way you might think, meaning she isn't from an alternate universe. Instead, Mary Marvel is part of the Shazam family, arguably one of the favorites of that family. Mary Bromfield was one of several children adopted alongside Billy Batson. In other continuities, she is eventually revealed to be the twin sister to Billy, but just like DC said with their continuity, you can choose whichever one you prefer to believe in. Mary eventually is given powers by her brother Billy and becomes Mary Marvel, or Lady Shazam, fighting alongside Billy/Shazam. Eventually, Mary herself became the new champion of Shazam and gained all the power that Billy once held while he became the guardian of the Rock of Eternity. Mary is one of the longest lasting members of the Marvel family, and as such, she is one hell of a version of Shazam. Coming in at number 8 is Freddie Freeman. If we're gonna include Mary Marvel on this list, Lady Shazam, we have to include Freddie Freeman. Freddie is the best friend of Billy Batson, and arguably the second most beloved member of the Marvel family. Freddie was one of the first people surrounding Billy to be also granted the powers of Shazam. He ended up becoming Captain Marvel Jr., but considering Freddie and Billy are like best friends, could you imagine your best friend being like, hey, so I got these awesome powers and I'm gonna give you access to them, but... and I know you're my best friend, but you have to call yourself me Junior and be my sidekick. Sorry, loser. I'd be so mad, but at the same time, Freddie did eventually become the next Shazam in the awesome Trials of Shazam story. And I honestly dig the long-haired blonde Shazam. He looks awesome, and he honestly did a pretty good job holding the title. Number 7, just imagine. So, back in 2002, DC teamed up with Stan Lee of Marvel Comics fame, and together they released the Just Imagine series, which is basically DC saying, hey, just imagine if we let Stan Lee come and make a bunch of characters with the basic principles of DC characters, which is such a great idea. One of those characters ended up being Robert Rogers from Just Imagine Shazam #1, and yes, he is Stan Lee's Shazam. When I tell you he is absolutely nothing like the regular Shazam, I ain't kidding. Other than saying Shazam to activate his powers. For starters, he is not a kid. He is actually an agent with Interpol, and he is assigned to the tough agent Carla Noral. Together they go to India to hunt down criminal Gunga Khan. Another big difference is that instead of being powered by the wizard Shazam and 6 gods, he is actually powered by the wizard Merlin of King Arthur legend, with the goal to hunt down Morgana Le Fay, because of course it's Stan Lee. Oh, also, it's worth mentioning that instead of turning into a handsome black-haired hunk, when Rogers yells Shazam, he turns into a big pink demon that gets a magical power boost, demon wings, super strength and durability, and a lovely little bone necklace. Excelsior! Number 6. Dawnbreaker. Now this is like a mix of evil Green Lantern and evil Bruce Wayne. Technically, it's just Bruce Wayne, but after the passing of his parents that fateful night, the young Bruce Wayne comes into possession of a Green Lantern ring. We have seen Bruce Wayne wield a Green Lantern ring before, but this is the dark multiverse. Bruce has an unbelievably strong will, and using his powerful will, he is able to override the programming of the Lantern ring, allowing him to use it to take lives. He creates monstrously terrifying green-like constructs and uses them to not just ruthlessly battle criminals, but anyone who stands in his way, including James Gordon, other Green Lanterns, and the Guardians of the Universe. Number 5. Superwoman. While Superwoman is technically an alternate version of Wonder Woman, originally she was actually the Lois Lane from Earth 3, who on this world was seemingly an Amazon, as she wielded the lasso of submission instead of truth, which is capable of forcing others to do her bidding and forcing them to love her. But this Superwoman had abilities that were more like a Kryptonian's. She was capable of not only everything Wonder Woman could do, but she could fire beams of red-hot energy from her eyes, and she could fly. She created an incredibly toxic love triangle between Ultraman and Owlman of the Crime Syndicate of America, and even had a child with Owlman, but promised to Ultraman that it was his. This was also while she was having another affair with Alexander Luthor. Damn girl, keep him pretty busy, huh? Yikes. Number 4. Raven from the Last 52 multiverse. The Batman who laughs comes from the dark multiverse, which is the flip side of the regular multiverse, composed of worlds where nightmares become real. All the worst case scenarios actually came to be on these worlds. During the final battle between the Batman who laughs and Wonder Woman, Laughs summons different heroes turned villains from across the dark multiverse to help him, and among the various characters is a version of the Teen Titans led by a version of Raven who gave in to her father Trigon, who corrupted both her and her Titans into twisted, powerful versions of themselves. Raven herself becomes a red-skinned, armor-clad demon. She actually looks kind of awesome, but she is undeniably evil and ultimately quite terrifying. Number 3. Furnace. Before the Martians became the Martians, they were an incredibly violent and powerful race called the Burning. The Guardians of the Universe experimented on the Burning and put genetic blocks in place to make them afraid of the fire they used as their most powerful weapon. Now fast forward, after the Justice League was trapped and taken down in Obsidian Age Atlantis, John Johns blamed himself for his friend's passing because his fear of fire completely overtook him. He recruits Scorch to help him overcome this fear, and he would use his telepathy to help her deal with her own problems. Unfortunately, in doing this, he also broke the genetic blocks, allowing John to become the incredibly dangerous Furnace, with all his original powers boosted in potential, especially his telepathy, plus an insane level of pyrokinesis. Number 2. Ultraman. In case you haven't figured out the theme of Earth 3, everyone here is just bad from birth. Ultraman was born on the dying Krypton to Jor-Il, who was able to secure a life pod for his incredibly powerful son, who he saw as his best chance of revenge. While in his life pod, Kal-Il was given the ideology of becoming the strongest possible being, eschewing all weakness in himself and in others. His rocket crash landed in Smallville, right through the home of the dysfunctional couple Johnny and Martha Kent, who he forced to be his parents until he was 7 years old, when he took their lives and burned their home to the ground. He took the name Ultraman, took over the Earth, and created the Crime Syndicate of America. Now, unlike Superman, Ultraman actually gets more powerful from kryptonite, and the sun is what makes him weaker, which is fine because he will literally just move the moon to block out the sun. And in at number 1 is Vampire Batman. In the Elseworlds Batman and Dracula trilogy, Batman goes up against vampires who have turned Gotham into their home, and then eventually Dracula himself. In the first novel, Red Rain, the hero wipes out the vampires and Dracula, although he is transformed into a vampire himself. Which means we get to see Batman take on crime using the powers of a vampire in the next novel, Bloodstorm. He does his bestest to resist the darker aspects of being a vampire, but that all goes kaput when Batman lashes out and drains the Joker's blood after the Joker de-lifed Catwoman. Batman has Alfred and Gordon stake him, putting Batman into a catatonic state, a state that he is revived from in Crimson Mist, the third novel, when criminals took over Gotham in his absence. But he is almost completely animalistic now thanks to the isolation. A bloodthirsty vampire Batman quickly wipes out most of his enemies in a very bloody form, drinking their blood in the process until he is finally put to rest by Alfred, Gordon, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, who all go with him to the grave.
Number 10. Young Justice. Earth 16 is the designated number given to the reality we see in Young Justice. Despite being an animated series, Young Justice is actually considered to be separate from the main DCEU reality, and is instead its own separate Earth. Here, Hal Jordan is Green Lantern. We first met Jordan in 2010 when the series started, but he continues to appear in the series up until its final season in 2021. This version of Hal here is one of the founding members of the Justice League. Like in the comics, he is also based in Coast City. One of the fun facts that I just find entertaining from this universe is that Hal Jordan is revealed as not liking Guy Gardner. Both he and Jon Stewart in this reality were very much against having Guy join the Justice League when they were considering adding new members to the roster. Also, I gotta say, I haven't watched Young Justice yet, and it keeps getting recommended to me, so I feel like I really need to watch it. If you have a favorite moment or episode, let me know, because I want to go back and watch all of it. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not tell us that you love us by clicking that like button? Seriously, it really helps us out if you do that, so if you want to, then I would like that. Number 9. Earth 5. Hal Jordan of Earth 5 hails from an interesting reality. Here Hal Jordan is still the hero known as Green Lantern, but what else do we know about him? Not much in terms of his origins, but what we do know is that in this reality, Hal doesn't swear or use profanity, because that's just not a thing that folks do on Earth 5, gosh darn it. He ended up being pitted against 2 other Green Lanterns when he was summoned by the future evil version of Captain Atom, who is known as Monarch. Number 8. Justice League of Assassins. Of course, with the Justice League of Assassins, they were pretty short-lived, appearing in only a single issue where, well, they kinda died, despite being, I would assume, amazing assassins. However, that being said, I think these are characters who ultimately look really cool when it comes to their design, which is why I'm including them here. And I'm sure, before this moment, although we don't get to see much of them, they were all pretty bad. Included among their ranks was their own Green Lantern, who appears to be somewhat cybernetic in terms of his abilities and his look, instead of having just a straight up Green Lantern power ring. Now this might explain why they didn't make it out alive past their first appearance in the Rebirth Superman issue number 15 from 2017. The Justice League of Assassins hail from Earth number 14. Hopefully we get to see more of Earth number 14 at some point. Number 7. Earth 33. Another version of Green Lantern that I find interesting, along with the world and team he hails from, is a Green Lantern of Earth 33. We don't know his name, but we know his powers are innately magic. He has only made one appearance in Countdown to Adventure issue number 3, but he comes from a really cool team from his Earth known as the League of Shamans. On Earth 33, their version of the Justice League are basically all magic users. The Green Lantern, while magic, still has a Green Lantern ring, and is supposedly also part of a version of the core from this reality. Whether the ring is also magic based remains to be completely confirmed here, but it does seem to be implied, at least to me, that Green Lanterns in this world were also based in the world of cosmic magic. At least, that's what it seems to me. Number 6. Abin Sur. On Earth 20, Abin Sur is actually the protector of Earth as Green Lantern. However, tragically, because he resembles a devil here, he actually protects Earth from a distance because he doesn't want to scare the planet's inhabitants. I think that's both sweet and also kinda sad. As such, he protects Earth from the shadows, a hero who is largely unknown to the planet's populace. Not only is he a member of the Green Lantern Corps in this reality, but he is also a member of the Society of Superheroes, who were brought together by this universe's Dr. Fate, who goes simply by Doc Fate. Abin Sur as Green Lantern is also one of the heroes who joins up with the multiversal superhero team known as Justice Incarnate. Number 5. Star Sapphire. Despite still being known as Star Sapphire on Earth 11, Carol Jordan, an alternate of both Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris, is actually the equivalent to Hal Jordan's Green Lantern of the Prime Earth. Earth 11 is a world in which the premier superhero team of Earth, known as the Justice Guild, is basically gender bent, being made up of mostly female superheroes who are versions of their Prime Earth male counterparts. Wonder Woman, of course, in this reality though, is a man, because that would of course be the gender bend for Wonder Woman, Wonder Man. Despite being the alternate version of this Earth's Green Lantern, however, Carol still remains here a Star Sapphire, but is cemented solely as a hero. So not necessarily Star Sapphire in the sense that sometimes she's kinda evil. Number 4. Tangent Comics. I love the whole look of this character, to be honest. She seems super cool and super mysterious. This version of Green Lantern hails from Tangent Comics, as per the name of this point, obviously. She made her first appearance in Tangent Comics Green Lantern issue number 1 in the 90s. Now, if you aren't familiar, Tangent Comics was actually a DC imprint that existed from 1997 to 1998. It had various one-shot comics that introduced new characters who use names familiar to us through DC Comics mainline, but adding a new creative spin on them. As a result, its characters were super different from the versions that we are used to. Green Lantern herself has claimed to have many different names, including Lois Lane and Zatanna, but her true identity still remains a mystery to us. Her power actually seems to come from a more traditional Chinese lantern as well, so she's quite a different character and quite a different take, which I guess is why I like her so much. Number 3. Alan Scott. Now for this one, we're not talking about the Prime Earth Alan Scott. In fact, you may have noticed I'm actively trying to avoid mentioning any Prime Earth lanterns on this list that, just are not Hal Jordan. We are talking instead about Alan Scott of Earth 2. This version of Alan Scott gained his powers after he almost died as the result of a train crash. Here, Alan Scott specifically uses his Green Lantern powers to fight against the Grey, which is also interesting because his former love, Sam Zhao, actually actually goes on to become an avatar of the white. Yes, in this reality, Alan Scott is still gay. For any who are wondering, in fact, his history here differs somewhat, as he is actually openly gay in this reality, which is a little different. In fact, Alan was about to propose to Sam when the train they were on crashed, ultimately leading to Alan getting his powers after being left as the only survivor. That's right, everyone else was gone, is just Alan left. He was approached by the Green Flame, which told him he was chosen to become the protector of Earth as Earth's Green Lantern. Number 2. Emerald Knight. This alternate version of John Stewart hails from Earth number 3, the home of the crime syndicate. This version of John, however, unlike many others from this universe, doesn't seem to be exactly a supervillain. Although he definitely does kill people and has made some questionable choices for sure, but there's definitely people in this reality that are more villainy than him. Initially, this version of John Stewart was a father and policeman who made a deal with a crime lord in order to get his daughter an emergency operation on her leg that she desperately needed. Although he paid the crime lord back right away, as he obviously did not want to be in debt to him, one night the crime lord's son ran into John and basically mocked him for having ever even made a deal with his father. Furious, John beat the son of the crime boss out back in an alleyway. When his daughter begged him to stop, a ring appeared presenting itself to him. Because the son was basically at this point threatening to tell his father and promised that John and his daughter would pay with their lives for their actions here, John chose to accept the ring and became an Emerald Knight, one of the overlords of Oa's soldier. A major difference between the Emerald Knights and the Green Lanterns of Prime Earth is that they can severely punish those who are deemed their enemy, often killing them. Number 1. DCAU John Stewart. While we know of John Stewart from the Prime Earth reality, the main continuity currently of the comics, he also has an alternate that hails from the DC animated universe. The animated universe isn't just pulled from one show, but is actually made up of a collection of shows, films, and comics, all exploring the same versions of these characters. It's not even really just its own universe, to be honest. At this point, it's also kind of like its own multiverse, possessing at least 9 of its own different alternate Earths. Here, John Stewart has a similar origin to his comic book counterpart, serving in the military before later being selected to be a member of the Green Lantern Corps. Part of the reason he actually believes he was selected is because of his time spent reading superhero comics as a kid, which he thinks actually helped him to aspire to become a hero, developing heroic traits and characteristics, and hence therefore being selected to become a Green Lantern.
Starting off the list today at number 10 is Red Death. The Dark Multiverse was given to us largely by telling the story of multiple different versions of Batman who have each been twisted into a corrupted, villainous version of Bruce Wayne. Brought together by the Batman Who Laughs, the Dark Knights are basically like an evil collection of Batman from across the Dark Multiverse, each one standing in or representing a member of the Justice League. Arguably one of the most popular of these Batmen would be Red Death, an evil Bruce Wayne with the powers of the Flash. In his dark reality, Bruce Wayne was pushed to the limit after losing so many of his sidekicks, which should be a good reason for why he should stop recruiting younglings to be his Robins, but I digress. Believing that he needed to be more brutal in his crime fighting, and that he would be better at using the Speed Force than Barry Allen, Bruce took down Flash's rogues, took their equipment, and then used it against his fellow Justice Leaguer. Batman then strapped Barry to his Batmobile, fused it together with the Cosmic Treadmill, and then he drove it all into the Speed Force, absorbing Barry and his powers. Bruce, now empowered with the Speed Force and much more evil than he should be, became the Red Death and joined with the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights. Number 9. Last Son. While the majority of characters given to us from DC's Dark Multiverse are alternates of Batman, thanks to the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights, the Dark Multiverse is a place where everything can go wrong with anyone. Probably the most alarming of the Dark Multiverse alternates would be the dark versions of Superman, and the Last Son, in my mind, stands above the rest. This version of Kal-El came from a dark universe corrupted by the Darkest Night, and instead of crash landing straight on Earth from the destruction of Krypton, Superman's rocket got lost and exposed to the cosmic storm of a black hole. When he finally reached his destination, Earth, the last son of Krypton was burning with the energy of 1,000,000 suns. It sounds super cool, and Last Son looks absolutely amazing, but his whole concept is based on Superman's fear of becoming overcharged by the sun, and his capabilities are through the roof. he's terrifying. Number 8. Robin King. Probably the most depraved, psychotic, and disturbing of the Batman Who Laughs posse would have to be the Robin King. Instead of becoming Batman, this young Bruce Wayne lost his parents just like every other, only it was by his own hand. This Bruce was depraved basically from birth, so much so that it even scared his version of Alfred Pennyworth, who still continued to protect the young Wayne. After the passing of Joe Chill and Bruce's parents, the young fella found that he felt mainly cheer from all that altercation. He was inspired by a robin singing and how the bird is known for taking over the nests of other birds. Under that ideology, he began to put together an arsenal and a utility belt, which he would then use to take out police officer James Gordon and Alfred once they were able to prove that Bruce was responsible for the passing of his own parents. Robin King then stuffed the Flash's mom inside Barry's ring, he took out the Arcane family and obtained the Rot, he somehow managed to take out Swamp Thing, and he got away with it all because everyone thought he was just some kid. This guy even obtained and then modified the anti-life equation, a manhunt consisting of Adam Strange, Balloon Buster, Enemy Ace, Firestorm, Hawkgirl, and Hawkman all fell to this Robin King before he was finally recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, and he even posed some resistance to that guy. All this from an untrained Bruce Wayne. It's too much. Number 7. Dawnbreaker. Of all the Dark Knights recently introduced in Dark Knight's Metal, aside from their leader, the Dawnbreaker stands among the others as one of the most creative and possibly terrifying combinations. This blending of Bruce Wayne with Green Lantern, while based on two heroes, is definitely not a good guy. After Bruce Wayne's tragic loss of his parents, the Green Lantern ring comes to him and grants him the powers of a Green Lantern, right there in the alley. Now, if you know Batman, you'll know that he has likely one of the strongest wills on Earth, even though that's not really talked about. So strong in fact that it allows him to overpower the programming of the Green Lantern ring and do things that Green Lanterns are not supposed to do, like using his monstrous hard-light constructs to take down criminals permanently, or like taking out the whole Green Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe. Stuff like that. He is a crazy powerful version of Batman, and I think it would be really cool if someone could put him on the big screen, in a sort of superhero horror movie, or something like that.
Number 6. Earth 43. One of the most despicable versions of Poison Ivy. This version hails from the home reality of the Red Rain series, the reality where Batman gets transformed into a vampire. Here, Poison Ivy is a serial killer who uses her powers to seduce men, making them want her desperately before she kills them with a single toxic kiss. Vampire Batman, however, quickly puts an end to Ivy. Here she has chlorokinesis as well, but his very presence causes harm to her plants, killing them. Despite her abilities, he defeats her easily enough by biting into her neck and decapitating her afterwards, to make sure that she doesn't turn into a vampire. This version of Ivy both first appears and dies in Batman Crimson Mist. Number 5. Arkham Game. In the Arkham video game universe, Ivy becomes a somewhat redeemed figure. Initially, she is a villain, one of the criminals locked up in Arkham Asylum who ends up breaking free. But although she seems to identify more with nature than humanity, she still ends up helping to save Gotham in the end, even though she recently plotted the city's demise herself. Poison Ivy here is toxic to most people thanks to some accidental mad science, which caused her to turn into a plant-human hybrid. Instead of blood pumping through her veins, Ivy has chlorophyll. She also has pheromone powers, which here make her a master of seduction. Poison Ivy teams up with Batman in the end in this reality to help him defeat Scarecrow's fear toxin, even sacrificing herself to Number 4. New Earth. Similar to her animated counterpart, Poison Ivy in the previous continuity of New Earth was not as powerful as the current version of her that we have in the comics. At least, not initially. Originally, her abilities were more based in the realm of science and her knowledge, but following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, she gained more superpower-based abilities. Her chlorokinesis in the New Earth continuity seems to be somewhat mystical in origin post-Crisis, actually being tied to the green, which is the same force that grants the powerhouse of Swamp Thing his powers. She also ends up developing pheromone control that allows her to seduce not just men, but people of all genders. She can control her green-hued skin, reducing its pigmentation, allowing her to move through a crowd unnoticed, and she can absorb the toxins of animals and plants to make her touch more deadly. Number 3. Lady of the Forest. It's possible that this version of Ivy is even more powerful than she seems in the comics. She hails from the reality belonging to the Dark Knights of Steel series, which sets up the DC universe in a more medieval and fantasy-based setting. Here, Ivy is known as the Lady of the Forest, protecting Hob Forest out of love for the court jester Harley Quinn. While her power is really shown to only have reach in the forest in the series, it is more magic-based in this reality, and it could potentially reach further than that. It could be just Ivy doesn't want to reach further than that. She helps the House of L, but she doesn't actually do it out of love for them, but only out of love for Harley. Number 2. Harley Quinn Animated Series. One of the most powerful versions of Ivy when it comes down to it is from the Harley Quinn Animated Series. While a humorous and comical show filled with zany antics and tons of jokes, Ivy's power is not to be laughed at here. In fact, it seems as though a few different versions of the character were combined together to give us this powerhouse version that ends up becoming Harley Quinn's best friend and later her girlfriend. Here, Ivy has powers of chlorokinesis and pheromone control. Although her pheromone powers actually also cause her victims to transform into trees and eventually die. Which could be a plus, could be a minus, depending on how you see that. Much darker than the comics for sure. Poison Ivy here can also heal from pretty much anything, even seemingly coming back from the dead, so long as she's buried in fresh soil, which seems to allow her to regenerate, which is pretty cool. Number 1. Prime Earth. Technically, this version of Poison Ivy isn't a variant because she's the main continuity version from the comics, who we now consider to be the Prime version, but she's really powerful, and I'd be remiss if I did not mention her on this list. So we're gonna talk about her. She's making my cut anyway. You're just gonna have to deal with it, because she's too good for me to not talk about her. The current main continuity version of Poison Ivy is similar to her New Earth counterpart, but her power levels are on a different scale. She was never able to stick to walls, sadly though. Yeah, that was the thing that New Earth Ivy could do pre-Crisis, which was pretty weird, but also kinda interesting. This version of Ivy was powerful enough to at one point use her abilities to control all of the people of the world through the greens that they ate. What's even more crazy is she was actually talked out of ruling the world, as that was really the only way to defeat her at that point. That's how powerful she was. She had such immense control over supremely powerful beings as well, like Superman. This version of Ivy can also connect to other plants through the green, allowing her to perceive many different places around the world through the shared consciousness of plant life. And because she is connected to the green, she can never really die either, like her Harley Quinn animated series counterpart. Kinda like Swamp Thing as well, she can kind of always come back because she kind of exists in plant life, you know what I mean? So I've started collecting the new Poison Ivy series, by the way, and I'm super excited to finally start reading it soon. I have such a backlog of comics to read right now. Ivy deserves more love in the comics, that is for sure. And did you know that that's her first solo book? That's crazy to me. Like, it's 2022, what are we doing here? Till next time, thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay nerdy, YouTube.